Hey there, and welcome. Today we're tackling a mission that so many French learners get stuck on, making that big leap from A2 to B1. We're going to break down the 3 essential tools you need to bridge that gap and, really start speaking with some serious confidence.
So that's the big question, isn't it? Are you really ready to level up your French? Because that's exactly what we're doing today, turning that goal into a super clear, actionable plan. Let's dive right in.
All right, so here's your mission, should you choose to accept it. We're moving beyond those simple, choppy A2 sentences. See, the B1 level, that's all about connecting your thoughts, telling actual stories, and getting those more complex ideas out smoothly. That's the jump we're making right now.
Okay, our very first tool is a big one. It's super powerful, mastering your tenses. I like to think of it as learning how to time travel in your conversations. Seriously, being able to just jump between the past, present, and future, it's a total game changer for sounding natural.
First stop in our time machine, the imperfect. This is what I call the scenery tense. You use it to paint a picture of the past. Describing what was going on, what things were like, or talking about stuff you used to do all the time. It really sets the stage for whatever story you're about to tell.
And this is the perfect example, right? When you say something like, "Quand j'étais petit, je jouais," you're not talking about one specific time you played. No, you're describing a habit, a whole vibe from your childhood. That's the magic of the imparfait.
Okay, now let's meet the imparfait's partner in crime, the Passé Composé. If the imparfait is the background scenery, the Passé Composé is the main event. It's the action tense. You use it for those specific, one-time things that happened and are now totally finished. Boom, done.
Hey, je suis allé au marché. Yesterday I went to the market. See? It's a single, completed action. It happened, it's over. You're just reporting a specific event, not describing some ongoing thing you used to do.
And this is where it all clicks. The imparfait sets the background. Il pleuvait. It was raining. Then bam, the passé composé drops in the main action. Quand je suis arrivé. When I arrived. So one is describing the ongoing situation, and the other reports the specific thing that happened right in the middle of it. Getting that dance between the two? That is pure B1 level.
And hey, let's not forget about the future. The future proche, the near future, is going to be your best friend for talking about plans. It's so easy to make. You just conjugate the verb aller and then tack on whatever verb you want to use. Je vais visiter. I am going to visit. It's simple, and trust me, you'll hear it all the time in everyday conversations.
All right, tool number 2 is all about what I call power verbs. These are those super common verbs that let you express what you want, what you can do, and what you have to do. They're the absolute building blocks of any real conversation.
So, say hello to your new best friends. Vouloir, pouvoir, devoir, savoir, and connaître. Just getting these 5 verbs down will massively expand what you're able to say. Yeah, okay, they're irregular, so they need a little extra love, but the payoff, it's huge.
See what I mean about them being irregular? Just look at the stems for vouloir and pouvoir. They just don't follow the rules. You've got to commit these to memory. It's absolutely essential. Je veux is I want, and je peux is I can. You are going to be using these all the time, constantly.
Next up, a classic hurdle for learners, savoir versus connaître. But trust me, the difference is actually pretty simple when you break it down. You use savoir for facts or skills. Je sais nager. I know how to swim. But you use connaître when you're familiar with a person or a place. Je connais Paris, right? You can't know how to Paris, but you can be familiar with it. Make sense?
Okay, our third and final tool is all about creating flow. We're talking about connectors. These little words are like the bridges that link your simple sentences together, turning them into these really nice flowing ideas. This is what's going to make you sound less like a textbook and way more like a real, fluent speaker.
So let's try one out right now. Look at the sentence here. I am tired, blank, I am going to continue working. How do you connect those two ideas? They kind of oppose each other, right? What's the word that builds that bridge?
And there you have it. Cependant. However. Je suis fatigué, cependant je vais continuer à travailler. See that? See how that one little word instantly makes the sentence more sophisticated, more logical? It shows exactly how those two thoughts are related. That is the power of a good connector.
Let's stock your toolkit with a few more. You've got par conséquent for results like therefore.
Then there's en plus, when you want to add more information, like moreover. And a great one is d'ailleurs, which is kind of like, by the way. Start sprinkling these into your conversations, and I promise you will sound more advanced almost immediately. So there we go, mission complete. We've got our 3 essential tools. Now the final step is just figuring out how to put them all together so you can really start operating at that B1 level.
So let's do a quick recap of your new B1 toolkit. First up, you master your tenses so you can time travel in your chats. Second, you use those power verbs to say what you want, what you can do, and what you have to do. And third, you build bridges with connectors to make your sentences flow beautifully. Easy enough, right?
So, what does all this actually mean for you? Well, it means you can finally move beyond just giving simple answers to questions. You can tell a real story about your childhood, mixing the imparfait and the passé composé. You can talk about your goals using vouloir, and you can link it all together with words like par conséquent. Basically, you can now speak with nuance.
And that brings us to the last and honestly the most important question. Because knowing this stuff is great, but practice is everything. So look at this toolkit we just built. What's the one thing, just one verb, one tense, one connector that you're going to practice today? Just pick one, go use it, and you'll be one giant step closer to that B1 goal.
Okay, let's dive right into this. If you've ever tried to tell a story in French, like any story at all, you've probably hit that wall, right? You want to talk about your past, but then boom, you're faced with a choice. Which past tense am I supposed to use here? It's a super common puzzle, but don't worry, we're going to solve it today. I mean, just think about it for a second. When you think back on your childhood, what comes to mind? It's not just a list of events, is it? No way. You remember the feel of things, the routines, the whole atmosphere. But you also remember those specific standout moments, the ones that really stick with you. So the big question is, how do you capture both of those things in French? Okay, so take a look at this. On one side, you have Je jouais au parc tous les jours. That's like, I used to play at the park every day. It's a routine, right? Something that happened over and over. But on the other side, you've got Un jour, j'ai trouvé un chat. One day, I found a cat. Totally different vibe. That's a specific one-time thing. Now here's the kicker. Both are perfectly correct, but they're describing the past in 2 completely different ways. And that is the heart of the puzzle we're going to crack. All right, to really get this, I want you to do something for me. Stop thinking like you're in a grammar class for a minute and start thinking like a movie director. Seriously. Because in your French storytelling toolkit, you've basically got 2 different cameras to shoot the past. And when you learn how to use both of them together, well, that's when you can create a really amazing scene. So your first camera is called l'Imparfait. Think of this as your director of photography. It's your wide-angle lens, the one you use for that big, beautiful, establishing shot. You use it to paint the picture, It sets the mood, describes the background. It tells us what things were like or what used to happen all the time. It's all about atmosphere. And then you've got your second camera, le Passé Composé. Now, if the Imparfait is the scene setter, the Passé Composé is your action hero. This is your action director, the one who yells cut. It's all about capturing those key events, the specific things that happened and pushed the plot forward. This guy is the star of the show. All right, let's zoom in on our director of photography first. Let's see how the Imparfait really works its magic to build the world of your story. So, the Imparfait is your go-to for a few key things. First, background descriptions. What the weather was like, what people were wearing, that kind of stuff. Second, habitual actions. Anything you used to do on a regular basis. It's also perfect for ongoing states or emotions. Think about how you were feeling over a period of time. And this is a big one, it's used to set the stage right before something important happens. And here's the classic example. Il faisait beau. The weather was nice. See? It wasn't nice for just a split second and then it was over. It was a continuous state, an ongoing condition. This is the perfect backdrop, the atmosphere for the story you're about to tell. And you know what the best part is? Forming the Imparfait is actually super straightforward. It's really consistent, which is great news. All you do is take the nous form of any verb, like nous parlons. Then you just chop off the ens at the end. That gives you your stem, so parlons. And from there, you just stick on the right Imparfait ending. That's it. Easy, right? Okay, scene set. The atmosphere is perfect. Now what? Well, now you need some action. So let's bring in our action director. It's time to call action with the Passé Composé. So the Passé Composé's job is crystal clear. It's all about the main plot points. We're talking about specific, completed actions, things that are finished, done, over with. These are the one-time events that make your story an actual story and not just a pretty description. This is what moves everything forward. Check out this example. J'ai lu un livre hier. I read a book yesterday. The action, reading the book, is specific. It happened yesterday. And here's the key. It's completed. You started it, you finished it. That event is like a neat little block that you've just placed on your story's timeline. And its name, Passé Composé, literally means compound past. That tells you everything you need to know about how to build it. It's a compound. It has two parts. You just take a helping verb, either avoir or être, and then you add the past participle of your main verb. That's the whole formula. Two parts for one single completed action. Okay, but here's where it gets really good. Any great director will tell you the magic isn't in just using one camera. No, the real genius is in the final cut, right? It's when you edit the shots from both cameras together. That's how you create drama, suspense, a story that people actually want to follow. And in French storytelling, there's this classic go-to technique. It's called the interruption scene. It's so cool. What you do is, you use the imparfait to describe something that was happening in the background, and then bam, you interrupt it with a sharp, specific event using the passé composé. This sentence right here is the perfect example of that technique in action. Je lisais. I was reading. See? That's our background scene, our establishing shot. Everything is calm, it's just happening. That's the imparfait. And then, boom, quand le téléphone a sonné, when the phone rang. That's the interruption, a single completed action in the passé composé that just completely changes the scene. So, there you have it, your two main tools. You've got your scene setter, and you've got your action hero. And once you really get their different jobs, you can finally stop just listing things that happened in the past and start telling a real, compelling story. So let's do a quick final recap to lock it all in. Okay, so here's the bottom line. This is your cheat sheet. Use the imparfait for the scene. That means background habits, anything that feels like was doing or used to be. Think of it like il faisait froid. It was cold. It's all about setting the mood. Then you bring in the passé composé for the action. These are your specific completed events, the I did something moments. Like, j'ai visité le Louvre, I visited the Louvre. Done. Finished. One paints the backdrop, the other makes things happen on it. So, the toolkit is officially yours now. You've got your camera for the atmosphere, and you've got your camera for the action. You're not just a French student anymore. You're a director. You're a storyteller. So the only real question left is, what story are you going to tell? Hey everyone. So are you kind of stuck in a French rut? Tired of describing everything with just a simple c'est bon or c'est grand? Well, in this explainer, we are going to unlock the exact tools you need to take your French descriptions from that beginner A2 level all the way up to a much more expressive, much more impressive B1. Okay, let's just dive right in with an example. At an A2 level, you might say, j'ai un nouveau livre. I have a new book. And you know what? That's totally correct. But a B1 speaker adds so much more flavor. They might say, ce livre est plus intéressant que le vieux. This book is more interesting than the old one. See that jump? That's the upgrade in detail we're going for today. So many of us who learn French hit what I like to call the descriptive plateau. You know that feeling, right? Where you know the basic grammar, you can make a sentence, but everything you describe just feels a little flat. Your sentences are correct, sure, but they're missing that flair that makes conversations really pop. If this sounds like you, then you are in exactly the right place. So how do we break through that plateau? It's all about having the right tools. Think of it like a toolkit. We're going to give you 3 super powerful grammatical tools that are going to totally change how you describe the world in French. Your language is about to get so much richer. All right, tool number 1 is all about getting a handle on irregular adjectives. Now, I know they can be a bit tricky, but they are so common. And once you nail them, you instantly start to sound more natural, more like a native speaker. It's that little bit of polish that makes all the difference. So what's the big secret with these adjectives? A lot of it comes down to a concept called vowel harmony. And don't worry, it sounds way more complicated than it is. Just think about how in English we say an apple instead of a apple. We do it because it just flows better, right? Well, French does the same kind of thing. It changes certain masculine adjectives before a vowel to avoid a clunky sound. So instead of beau, you get the much smoother belle. Just take a look at this table. It lays it all out perfectly. For beautiful, you've got beau before a consonant, like in un beau jardin. But put it before a vowel, like in un bel arbre, and it changes to belle. It's the exact same logic for vieux, which becomes vielle, and nouveau, which becomes nouvelle. Getting these down is a total game changer, I promise. Okay, now that we're making our individual descriptions sound amazing, let's grab our second tool, the art of comparison. This is where you really level up, because you stop just describing things by themselves and you start talking about how they relate to each other. This is the key to sharing your opinions and making really sharp observations. And here is the fantastic news. There are basically just 3 simple patterns for almost any comparison you'll ever want to make. If something is more than, you use plus que. If it's less than, it's moins que. And if you want to say 2 things are equal, you just use aussi que. See the structure? The adjective gets sandwiched right in the middle. Paris est plus grand que Lyon. It's simple, it's elegant, and it's incredibly powerful. All right, on to our third and final tool. This is the one that takes you to the absolute peak of description. We're talking about superlatives. This is how you say something isn't just bigger, it's the biggest. Not just interesting, but the most interesting. I mean, just listen to the power in a sentence like this. C'est la ville la plus belle. It's so definitive, right? It makes a really strong statement. And the structure is pretty straightforward. You just use le, la, or les, plus the word plus, or moins, right before the adjective. This little formula lets you crown anything as the most or the least of something. But just like in English, French has a couple of major exceptions you've got to watch out for. You don't say plus bon for better. Nope. The word bon completely changes to meilleur. And for the best, it's le meilleur. In the same way, mauvais, which means bad, becomes pire for worse, and le pire for the worst. You'll want to burn these 2 into your memory because they'll save you from a super common mistake. Okay. Wow. We've officially filled up our toolkit. We have our irregular adjectives, our comparatives, and our superlatives. But just knowing the rules is really only half the battle. Now, we've got to take this stuff out of the textbook and bring it into the real world, into actual conversations. So how do you actually master all this? By using it all the time. Grab a friend and compare your favorite cities. Role play describing your phone versus their phone. Try writing just a short paragraph about your favorite place using these new tools. Or get a group together and make a top 3 list of anything. Movies, books, you name it. The goal here is to make these patterns automatic when you speak. So, what does this all really add up to? It's about a complete transformation in how you speak French. It's your path from just stating simple facts to actually weaving together detailed, interesting, fluent descriptions. Once you master this toolkit, you are no longer just a passive observer describing the world. You can actually articulate your opinions, make nuanced judgments, and paint a really vivid picture with your words. And that ability to compare and describe with sophistication, that is the true sign of an intermediate B1 French speaker. So, you have the toolkit now. It's all yours. And I'll leave you with this one question to get you started. What is the very first thing you are going to describe using your newly upgraded French? Think about it, and then go out there and say it.
In English, we use the word why for pretty much everything. But in French? French is a little different. Answering why forces you to make a really important choice. Get it right, and you suddenly sound so much more fluent. Get it wrong, and well, you might just mix up your purpose with your reason. So let's break down this super logical and kinda elegant system.
So, first things first, let me ask you a question. Why are you learning French? Seriously, think about it for a second. Is it for travel, to connect with your family, maybe to land a new job? Whatever it is, just hold that thought.
Okay, you got your answer? I'm willing to bet whatever you just thought of falls into one of 2 buckets. It's either a goal, something you're aiming to achieve in the future, or it's a reason, the cause, the motivation behind what you're doing right now.
And here's why this is such a game changer. In French, this distinction isn't some minor nice-to-know detail. No way. It's a fundamental part of the grammar. Mastering this one single concept is the key to expressing what you want and why you want it with total clarity, just like a native speaker would.
All right, let's tackle the first piece of this puzzle, expressing your goal. Or you could call it your purpose. This is all about talking about that future you're working towards.
Your number one most common tool for this is going to be pour, followed by a verb in its basic form, the infinitive. For instance, je travaille pour gagner de l'argent. I work to earn money. The rule here is super simple. If the person doing the action is the same person with the goal, pour is your best friend.
Now, pour is perfect for everyday chat, but what if you want to sound a little more formal? Well, you've got another option, afin de. The structure is exactly the same. You could say, je travaille afin de gagner de l'argent. It's basically the difference between saying to and in order to in English. Same meaning, just a more elevated tone. It's especially handy in writing.
Okay, so that's all pretty straightforward when you're doing the work for your own benefit. But what happens when the subject changes? What if you're doing something so that someone else gets the benefit? And this is where French grammar gets really elegant. When the person doing the action is different from the person with the goal, you need a new connector, afin que. For instance, I work so that my family is happy. But look closely at that sentence. The French verb that comes after afin que needs a special form, and this is the secret to the whole structure.
That special form is called the subjunctive mood. And please, don't let the name scare you. It sounds way more complicated than it is. It's simply a verb form that French uses for things that aren't concrete facts. We're talking desires, possibilities, or goals. It's the mood for things you want to happen, not things that are happening.
For example, here's the subjunctive for the verb être, to be. In our sentence, afin que ma famille soit heureuse, that little word soit is the subjunctive. Now, you don't need to memorize this whole chart right now. The big takeaway is just this. Afin que is the trigger. The second you use it, your brain should go ding, 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 subjunctive chime.
Okay, so we've totally nailed the forward-looking why, the purpose. Now let's switch gears and look at the backward-looking why, the cause. This is how you explain the reason for something that's happening.
And just like we saw with purpose, you've got options for explaining the reason. But here's the catch. These are not simple synonyms you can just swap out whenever you feel like it. French gives you 3 distinct tools for because, and each one has its own specific job to do.
All right, let's break them down. First up, parce que. This is your all-purpose go-to workhorse. It directly answers the question, why? Then you've got car, which is its more formal cousin, something you'll see more in writing. Just remember the one big rule. You can't start a sentence with car. And finally, there's puisque. This one's special. You use it for a reason that's already obvious to everyone. Think of it like saying since or seeing as.
Let's see this in action. If someone asks you, why aren't you going out? This is your classic answer. Je ne sors pas parce qu'il pleut. I'm not going out because it's raining. You're just giving them new information, a direct cause for your action. Simple.
But now, watch what happens when we use puisque. Puisqu'il pleut, je ne sors pas. Since it's raining, I'm not going out. The whole vibe here is completely different. By starting with puisque, you're basically saying, hey, we both know it's raining, it's an obvious fact, therefore I'm not going out. It changes the whole dynamic of the sentence. Pretty cool, huh?
So, there we have it. We've decoded the 2 sides of why. We've looked at goals and we've looked at reasons. And now you've got a complete toolkit to express your motivations with a ton of precision and nuance.
So, let's do a super quick review of your new toolkit. When you're talking about your own goal, you'll use pour, or the more formal afin de. When the goal is for someone else, you need that special key, afin que, plus the subjunctive. And for giving reasons, parce que is your direct, all-purpose answer. Car is for more formal writing, and puisque is for when the reason is just obvious to everybody.
And that is the beautiful logic behind the French why. It's a great reminder that learning a language isn't just about memorizing words, is it? It's about understanding the intention behind them. You now have the keys to explain your own goals and reasons with confidence. So my question to you is, what's the first thing you're going to explain?
All right, welcome. Today we are diving into one of the most essential and, let's be honest, trickiest parts of speaking French, figuring out the 2 different words for you. You know, if you get this right, you instantly sound more like a local. But if you get it wrong, well, things can get a little awkward. So let's just jump right in with this scenario. Imagine this. It's your first day at a new job in Paris. You walk in and you meet your new boss. You want to be friendly, right? Approachable. But what comes out of your mouth? That one little word choice could set the entire tone for your whole professional relationship.
No pressure.
And yeah, that's really the core of it, isn't it? Unlike in English where you is just you, French makes you stop and think about the social dynamic every single time. It's not just about grammar. It's a window into the relationship, the respect, and the whole context of the conversation. But hey, don't sweat it. We're going to break it all down and make it super simple.
Okay, this is where we turn that potential for awkwardness into a chance for real, authentic connection. Once you understand the code behind tu and vous, you've basically got the key to unlocking genuine French conversations.
You know, when you really get down to it, it's all about the vibe. Think of tu as your warm, casual, hey, we're on the same level kind of you. It's for your friends, your family, people you know well. Vous, on the other hand, is all about creating a polite, respectful space. It's your go-to for professional situations, or anytime you want to show a bit of formal respect.
So think of this table as your social cheat sheet. Tu is for your inner circle, friends, family, people your age. Vous is for pretty much everyone else, at least at first. Strangers, older people, your boss, and pay close attention to that last line. The first time you meet someone, it's almost always vous. It's this fascinating piece of social etiquette that's built right into the language itself.
Okay, so we've got the basic rules down. That's the what. Now, let's get into the how by building up your vocabulary toolkit for the real world. You know, the words you'll actually use when you're talking about work, life, and everything else. First word for our toolkit, réunion, a meeting. I mean, this is classic vous territory. Anytime you're in a professional setting talking about projects or deadlines, formality is key. It's just the default, you know? It sets that tone of mutual respect right from the start.
All right. On the flip side, we've got loisir, your hobbies, leisure time, the fun stuff. When you're chatting with friends about what you did over the weekend, you are deep in tu territory. This is where you're really connecting with someone, sharing what you love to do. Total tu zone.
Now this one, réseau social, or social media. This is where things get a little tricky in our modern world, right? Is a message on a professional network formal or informal? Well, here's a good rule of thumb. If you'd use vous with that person in real life, stick with vous online. It's always safer to start formal and let them invite you to be more casual.
And our last vocabulary word is actualité, or current events. It's the perfect kind of small talk for someone you've just met. And what do we use when we meet someone new? You got it. Vous.
All right, theory time is over. Let's put this all together and see how these rules and words actually play out in conversations you might really have. It's time to put the code into practice.
The workplace is probably the best place to see this play out because the context is so clear. You could be talking about the exact same project, but the way you say it completely changes based on who you're talking to. The person you're speaking to literally changes everything.
So check this out. You're talking to a colleague, a peer, someone on your level. It's super casual, totally normal to say, I think the project is interesting, don't you? It's collaborative, it's friendly.
But what happens when you're talking to your boss about the very same work? The whole thing shifts. Sir, could you check this report? Suddenly, the language is more polite, more formal. You're using vous to acknowledge the hierarchy. It's the same workplace, but a different relationship means completely different French.
Okay, so let's wrap this all up and talk about the big takeaway here. Because this is so much more than just avoiding a simple mistake. It's about getting a handle on a huge piece of French culture.
And this is really the most important thing to remember. When you choose the right you, you're sending a message. You're telling the other person, I see you, I understand our relationship, and I respect the situation we're in. It's how you build real connections.
So, here are the absolute essentials, your key to feeling confident. Tu is for your people, friends, family. Vous is for everyone else, especially strangers, elders, and at work. And seriously, this is the golden rule. If you are ever in doubt, just start with vous. You can't go wrong with being too polite. Oh, and listen, how someone talks to you is your biggest clue. Just mirror what you hear.
So now you've got the key, you've cracked the code. Take a second and think about your own life. If you were to map out your social world in French, who would get that familiar tu and who would get the respectful vous? It's actually a fascinating way to think about how we build and define our relationships, isn't it?
You know that feeling when you try to translate a sentence from English to French, and even though every word is technically correct, it just sounds weird? It's a super common frustration. Well, today, we're going to crack the code on one of the biggest reasons why that happens. We're going to unlock a core concept of French, the subjunctive mood. Okay, let's just dive right in with a classic example.
Let's say you want to express, I want that you are here. A direct word-for-word translation might lead you to say something like, Je veux que tu es ici. It seems totally logical, right? But to a native French speaker, it just clanks. It sounds wrong. So the big question is, why?
And here is the answer. The right way to say it is Je veux que tu sois ici. Look closely at that verb change, from est to sois. Now, this isn't a simple mistake in tense, like past or future. This is something else entirely. It's a special grammatical mood called the subjunctive.
That's right. The subjunctive isn't about when something happens. It's not a tense, it's a mood. And it's all about how the speaker feels about the action. Think of it as the language of subjectivity, of emotions and desires, not just of facts.
Here's a simple way to think about it. When you're stating a cold, hard fact, something that just is, you use the normal verb forms you already know. But the moment you step into the world of things that aren't certain, a wish, a doubt, a necessity, an emotion, that's when French brings in the subjunctive. It's literally grammar for your feelings.
So this all sounds pretty abstract, but how do we actually make these special verbs? You might be thinking it's going to be super complicated, but here's the good news. For the vast majority of verbs, it follows a surprisingly simple and predictable recipe. Let's break it down.
It's really just a simple three-step process. Step 1. Start with the they form of the verb in the present tense. So for parler, to speak, that's il parle. Step 2, you just chop off that final ant ending. That leaves you with your stem, parle. And finally, step 3, you just add on the special subjunctive endings you see here. So you get que je parle, que tu parles, que nous parlions. See, it's a really consistent pattern for most verbs.
Of course, this is French we're talking about, so there are always going to be a few exceptions to the rule. But honestly, the good news is there are only 4 major irregular verbs you really need to memorize to get going, and they happen to be some of the most common verbs in the entire language.
And here they are, the big 4. Être, avoir, aller, and faire. To be, to have, to go, and to do. And hey, look, that verb we saw right at the beginning, soit, that comes from être. Now, these guys don't follow the recipe, so you just kind of have to learn them by heart. But if you focus on just these 4, you will be set for a huge, huge number of situations.
All right, so now we know how to build the subjunctive verbs. The next really crucial question is, when do we actually use them? Well, the key is to listen for specific phrases, we'll call them triggers, that basically signal a subjective situation is coming up.
These triggers usually fall into 3 main categories. First up, necessity. Phrases like il faut que, which means it is necessary that, or il est important que. Second, you've got desire, je veux que, I want that, or j'aimerais que. And finally, emotion. Things like je suis content que, I'm happy that, or je suis triste que. Anytime you hear one of these phrases followed by the word que, it's like a big flashing sign that the subjunctive is right around the corner.
Okay, so we've covered how to form it and when to use it, but there is one golden rule that ties this entire thing together. And seriously, if you only remember one thing from all of this, make it this next point. It's a game changer. The subjunctive almost always pops up when there are 2 different subjects in the sentence. Check out the left side. Je veux apprendre. Who wants? I do. Who's learning? I am. It's the same subject. No subjunctive needed. But now look at the right. Je veux que tu apprennes. Who wants? I do. But who's learning? You are. We have 2 different subjects. That change of subject after the word que is the real trigger. And this, right here, sums up the whole concept perfectly. You need all these ingredients together. You need one of those trigger phrases expressing subjectivity, you need the little word que, and you need a different subject doing the second action. When you have all 3, that's when you use the subjunctive.
So, to wrap this all up, let me ask you a question using the very grammar we just learned. Il est important que vous pratiquiez. It's important that you practice. So what part of the subjunctive are you going to focus on first? The recipe, those 4 regular verbs, or maybe listening for those triggers? Ever wanted to talk about your plans or your dreams in French, but just felt like you're hitting a wall? Well, it turns out there's this simple, kind of elegant secret that French speakers use all the time, and today we're going to crack it open. So, let's kick things off with a simple question. If you have free time this weekend, what are you going to do? Maybe you'll read a book or see some friends. That universal if-then way of thinking, that's exactly what we're unlocking in French today.
And look, this isn't about some crazy, complicated grammar rule you have to memorize. Think of it more like a formula, a logical tool you can start using to talk about the future with confidence, like right away.
And the key that unlocks this whole thing? It's just one tiny two-letter word, si, which, yeah, you probably guessed it, means if. This little word is literally the engine that drives all sorts of future possibilities.
All right, section 1, a formula for the future. We're going to look at how French speakers connect conditions to results. And trust me, once you see this pattern, you'll start hearing it everywhere.
Okay, so the fancy grammar name for this is the si clause. But don't let that term scare you off. All it really means is you're setting up a realistic what-if scenario. You're just creating a link between a possible situation and what will happen because of it.
And here it is, the formula, broken down into two super simple steps. Step 1 is the condition. It starts with si, and this is the important part. It uses the present tense. Then you've got step 2, the result. That's what's gonna happen. So that part uses the future tense. See? Present condition, future result. It just makes sense.
Let's see this thing in action. Si je finis mon travail, if I finish my work, right? That's our condition, and notice it's in the present tense. So what's the result? Je sortirai ce soir. I will go out tonight. Boom. Future tense. See? Condition, result. Perfect.
Okay, on to section 2, the one golden rule. So you've got the formula down, but there is one rule you absolutely positively have to know. This is what separates people who sound like they're reading from a textbook from people who sound natural.
Okay, you ready? Here it is. Burn this into your memory. In that first part of the sentence, the part that starts with si, you never, ever, ever use the future tense. I know it feels like you should, because you're talking about the future, but nope. The condition itself always stays in the present.
And this right here is the #1 mistake people make. Your brain wants to say, if I will have time, right? It feels logical, but in French, that's a big no-no. The condition stays simple, in the present. Si j'ai, if I have. The future tense, that's only for the result part of the sentence. Just remember this, keep the future out of your si clause.
All right, section 3, from plans to daydreams. Let's have some fun with this and see how this little formula works in actual conversations. You know, for everything from simple weekend plans to our biggest, wildest daydreams.
So, let's picture a pretty great scenario. What will you do if you travel to France? Go on, think about it for a sec. How would you build that sentence using the formula we just learned?
A classic answer, and it's absolutely perfect. Si je voyage en France, present tense condition, right? And the result? Je visiterai le Louvre. Future tense result. See? You're talking about a future trip, but you're using a present condition to set it up. It just works so well.
Okay, let's get a little more imaginative. Let's forget about concrete plans for a minute and just daydream. What happens if you win the lottery?
And look how versatile this is. Si je gagne, if I win. That's present tense. And the result of that awesome condition? Je voyagerai, I will travel. Future tense. The exact same formula takes you from making practical plans to dreaming about changing your entire life.
Now, obviously, to really make this work, you need the right tools for that second half of the sentence, the result. And that means we got to get comfortable with a few key verbs in the future tense.
So think of this as your personal cheat sheet. These are some of the most common irregular verbs you're going to run into. You can see the future stem here. That's the base you'll add the endings to. Like for to go, aller, the stem is ir. And for to be, être, it's ser. These are absolute must-knows.
Okay, so knowing the stems is one thing, but seeing them in a real sentence is where the light bulb really goes on. So let's grab one of those irregulars from the table and put it to work.
And here we are. Si je peux, if I can, simple present tense. And the result? J'irai à Paris. I will go to Paris. And there it is, that irregular stem IR from the verb aller. The formula holds up, even with the tricky verbs. All right, last section, your key to the future. Let's just zoom out for a second and really appreciate how powerful this one little structure is. Seriously, this isn't just about passing a grammar quiz, it's a key that unlocks actual real-life conversations. So let's do a quick recap of the essentials. First, you're going to use si to talk about what's possible.
The formula is your new best friend. See plus the present tense leads to the future tense. And what's the golden rule? That's right. Never use the future tense right after see. You can use this for everything, weekend plans, life goals, all of it.
You know, by really getting this one concept down, you've grabbed so much more than just a grammar rule. You've got a key building block for genuine fluency. This is how you go from just describing stuff to actually expressing your own personal vision for the future.
So, you have the formula now. You've got the secret. The only question left is, what are you going to do with it? What future are you going to describe starting right now?
Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we are diving into French past tenses. But listen, this isn't going to be your average dry grammar lesson. Nope. This is all about unlocking the secret to telling really, really good stories in French. You know, the kind with depth, context, and a bit of drama. Let's jump in.
So what is that secret anyway? How do you go from just, listing things that happened in the past to actually painting a picture that people can see and feel? Well, it's not about knowing a million fancy words. It's actually something way more fundamental to how we build a narrative. And here it is. It all comes down to how you layer the past. The trick is to stop thinking of past tenses as just a bunch of rules to memorize. Instead, think of them as tools in your storytelling toolbox. Each one has a very specific job to do: building a timeline, setting the scene, and of course delivering the big moment in your story. Okay, let's kick things off with a sentence that you've probably seen a million times. When I was at the beach, I saw a magnificent sunset. Super simple, right? But even in this tiny little story, there are two different past tenses doing two totally different jobs to make it all work.
So let's break this down. Over on the left, you've got the imparfait. J'étais, I was. This is your scene setter. It's the background music, the description of what was going on. But then on the right, you have the Passé Composé. J'ai vu, I saw. This is the main event. It's that specific, finished action that happens in the scene. So you've got the setting, and then, boom, what happened?
That's a decent start, for sure. But the best stories, they have layers. What if something really important happened before we even saw that sunset? Right now, our story feels a little flat, a little incomplete. There's a piece of the timeline that's totally missing.
And that leads us to the big question for today. How in the world do you talk about the past before the past? An action that was already completely finished before your main story even got started. Well, to do that, you're going to need a brand new tool.
And here it is. Let me introduce you to your new best friend, le plus que parfait. Its one single solitary job is to talk about something that was already done before another past action. In English, this is our had done tense. You use it all the time. I had already eaten when you called. She had finished the report before the meeting started. It's the absolute key to adding that first crucial layer to your story.
So let's go back and add this new tool to our story. When I was at the beach, I saw a sunset because I had already swum in the morning. See that? See how much more context that gives us? The had swum, j'avais déjà nagé, that happened way before the sunset. It gives us a reason, a bit of backstory, all with one simple change in tense.
So, now we have it, a complete toolkit. We've got the imparfait for the scene, the passé composé for the main event, and now the plus que parfait for the backstory. Let's quickly break down how to build and use each of these three amazing storytelling tools.
Okay, so forming the plus que parfait might sound complicated, but it's actually super straightforward. First, you take the helper verb you'd normally use, so either avoir or être. Then, step 2, you just put that helper verb into the imparfait. And finally, you just add the past participle of your main verb. That's literally it. Imparfait of the helper plus the past participle. Done. Let's look at a couple of quick examples. For a verb like finir that uses avoir, it becomes j'avais fini, I had finished. And for a verb like arriver that takes être, it's nous étions arrivés, we had arrived. See? The formula just works. This chart right here is everything. It's basically your storytelling cheat sheet. First, you've got the plus que parfait for the action that happened first of all, j'avais nagé. Then, you have the imparfait for the background setting, il faisait beau, it was beautiful. And finally, you have the passé composé for the main event, j'ai vu. 3 tenses, 3 very clear jobs, 1 awesome story. All right, we've got the theory down, we've got the tools. Now for the really fun part, actually putting it all together.
let's look at the blueprint for how these tenses combine to build a really sophisticated story.
And this timeline just makes it all click, doesn't it? Look how clearly it lays everything out. Way back in the past, before the past, in the morning, the swimming happened. J'avais déjà nagé. That's our plus que parfait. Then we jump forward to the evening, where we get the setting. J'étais à la plage, our imparfait. And right there in the middle of that setting, the main event happens. J'ai vu un coucher de soleil, our passé composé. It's a perfect chronological map.
And hey, this structure isn't just for our one little beach story. It's a formula, a blueprint you can apply to any narrative you want to tell. Let's test it out with a completely different example just to prove it.
Check this out. It's the exact same formula in action. First, you set the background with the imparfait. Quand j'étais à Londres, when I was in London. Then you drop in that action that happened before the main point of the story, using the plus que parfait. J'avais déjà visité Big Ben. I had already visited Big Ben. And then, boom, you hit him with the main event. Un jour, j'ai rencontré un ami. And one day, I met a friend. Background, prior action, main event. It's the same powerful structure.
So I hope you're seeing that the real point here is something much, much bigger than just grammar. We haven't just been learning rules from a textbook. We've been learning how to become better, more precise, and way more engaging storytellers.
And really, that's the ultimate goal. Mastering the plus que parfait along with the other two isn't about passing some test. It's about getting the fluency to share your own experiences, your memories, and your stories with all the color and depth they actually deserve.
So now you have the toolkit. You've got the blueprint to build these complex, layered narratives about anything that's happened in your past. The power is yours. So my only question for you is, what's the first story you're going to tell?
Have you ever been in one of those really great French conversations, a real debate, and you have the perfect thing to say, but the words just aren't there? It's the worst. Well, today we're going to fix that. We're building your complete French opinion toolkit so you can jump into those debates with total confidence.
Yeah, that exact moment of frustration, that's what we're tackling head on. By the time we're done here, you're going to have all the key phrases you need to make sure your voice is heard and your point gets across, loud and clear. So, here's our game plan. We'll start with the basics, just stating your opinion. Then we're going to level up and look at how to structure a really solid argument. After that, we'll get into the super important stuff, how to agree and disagree without, starting a fight. We'll put it all together in a little example, and then it's your turn.
All right, let's dive in. First up, the foundation, the absolute must-knows. How do you just get your point of view out there? Plain and simple.
Okay, our first tool in the kit is a total classic. À mon avis. Seriously, think of this as your #1 go-to opener. It's direct, everyone knows what it means, and it's like a little flag that says, hey, personal opinion coming up.
So you could say something like, à mon avis, voyager est important. Si, super simple, totally effective. It just gets the ball rolling.
Next up, we've got two phrases that are just so useful. Je pense que and je trouve que. Now, they might look pretty similar, right? But there's a cool little difference. Je pense que is more analytical. It's your basic I think that. But je trouve que, that's more personal, more about a feeling, like I find that. Choosing the right one, it just adds this really nice layer of nuance. So for example, je trouve que la technologie aide beaucoup. Can you kind of feel that difference? It's not just a cold, hard fact. It feels more like a personal conclusion you've come to. It's just a fantastic way to frame your thoughts.
Okay, so you've put your opinion out there. Awesome. But a really strong argument? It's more than just one sentence. To be really persuasive, you need a little structure. So let's look at how to build a case that's got a bit more depth.
And I've got a fantastic structure for this. D'un côté, de l'autre. It literally means on one side, on the other. Like on the one hand. Using this, it instantly makes your argument sound so much smarter. It tells the other person, hey, I've actually thought about this from more than one angle.
Check out this example. D'un côté, les réseaux sociaux connectent les gens, de l'autre, ils prennent du temps. And just like that, you've gone from a simple opinion to a really balanced, thoughtful argument. See how powerful that is?
So, you've made your point, you've structured it beautifully, but a debate isn't a monologue, right? It's a two-way street, and this is where it gets really interesting, the interaction. How do you agree with someone? And maybe even more important, how do you disagree in a way that keeps the conversation alive instead of shutting it down?
Okay, for agreeing, you've got your standard je suis d'accord, which is perfect, or if you really agree, you can throw in a tout à fait. But take a look at that disagree column. This is so key in French conversations, softness. Instead of a hard no, use these gentler phrases like pas tout à fait, not quite, or pas vraiment, not really. It lets you push back on an idea without sounding confrontational at all.
And this little three-step method, it's pure gold. Seriously. First, you show them you're actually listening. Je vois ton point de vue. I see your point. Then, you gently bring in your own idea. Mais je pense que, but I think that. And hey, if you want to be extra smooth, tossing in a little peut-être, perhaps, keeps the whole conversation respectful and totally open.
Okay, theory is one thing, but let's see how this whole toolkit actually works when the rubber meets the road. Let's look at a real conversation. So let's imagine a little back and forth. Speaker number one kicks things off with a clear opinion, using one of our new phrases.
Je trouve que les voitures polluent trop.
Simple, direct, nothing fancy.
And now, here comes the reply. Notice what they don't do? They don't just say, no, you're wrong. Instead, they use that softer phrase we just learned, je ne suis pas tout à fait d'accord. And, this is crucial, they immediately give a reason why. That right there, that's the heart of a good, productive debate.
Whew, we've covered a lot of ground, haven't we? So let's do a super quick review of the essential tools you've just packed into your brand new opinion toolkit.
Really, it all comes down to these four main jobs. You've got your openers for stating what you think, you've got that structure for adding some depth, you have your easy ways to agree, and you've got that killer strategy for disagreeing politely. If you can get a handle on these four things, you are going to be ready for pretty much any discussion that comes your way.
All right, so we've built the toolkit together, we've seen how it works, and now it's all yours. It's time to move from just listening to actually speaking.
So, here's a topic for you. Are social networks good for society? What do you think? Right now, try to form an opinion. You could start with a simple à mon avis. Or, hey, why not try that more balanced approach with d'un côté, de l'autre? You can even pause this to think about it. Go on, give it a shot. Your next French conversation is waiting.
Do you ever feel like your French sentences are just a little bit clunky? You know, like you're using simple building blocks when what you really want to do is create something elegant and flowing? Well, we're going to fix that. We are going to transform those simple sentences into sophisticated descriptions using 5 absolutely essential tools from our grammar toolbox.
I mean, just look at the difference here. On the left, you've got two separate thoughts. I like the book. You gave it to me. It works, sure, but it's choppy, right? Now look at the right. I like the book that you gave me. See how that one tiny little word, que, just connects everything so smoothly? That right there is the power of relative pronouns. They are the absolute secret to sounding more fluent and natural.
Okay, so let's dive in. I want you to imagine your French grammar skills are like a toolbox. And to build really impressive, complex sentences, you need the right tools for the job. Today, we're adding 5 of the most powerful ones to your collection.
And here they are, que, dans, où, and lequel. Each one has a very specific job to do, whether it's identifying who's doing an action or showing who owns what. Think of this as our game plan, so let's get to know our first 2 tools.
Every good toolbox needs a hammer and a screwdriver, right? The tools you're going to reach for again and again. Well, in French grammar, that's qui and que. They are by far the most common and fundamental relative pronouns, so getting these down first is absolutely crucial.
Okay, this table lays it out perfectly. QUI is for the subject. That's the person or thing doing the action. So you have la femme qui parle, the woman who is speaking. She's the one doing the talking. But QUE, that's for the object, the thing that's receiving the action. So le livre que j'ai lu is the book that I read. The key question to ask yourself is this pronoun the doer, or is it the thing being acted upon?
All right, so with the basics covered, let's grab a more specialized tool from the box. This is DOT, and its whole job is about making connections, specifically showing possession or some kind of relationship between things.
You know, the real secret to mastering DOENT is to listen for phrases that use of or whose in English. Whenever you want to say something like, the man of whom I speak, or the book whose cover is red, DOENT is going to be your go-to. It's just a super elegant way to replace those kind of clunky constructions with de plus a noun.
And here is a perfect example. Instead of saying something awkward like, he is the man, the car of the man is red, Don't gives us this beautiful smooth sentence. C'est l'homme dont la voiture est rouge. He is the man whose car is red. See how neatly it connects the man to his car? So much better.
Our next tool should probably look pretty familiar to you. Où isn't just for asking the question where, it's also a really powerful relative pronoun. Let's call this one the locator.
Now, the cool thing about où is that it kind of pulls double duty. Its main job, of course, is to refer to a place, like the city where I live. But, and this is neat, it can also refer to a moment in time, like the day when we met. It really is all about the context.
Here's the classic example you'll always see. C'est la ville où je suis né. This is the city where I was born. Où creates that perfect direct link right back to the noun, la ville. It's simple, it's clean, and honestly, it's essential for telling stories and describing places.
Okay, we've made it to our final tool. And this one, well, this one's the specialist. Lequel is like the precision instrument you pull out of the toolbox when the situation gets a little trickier, specifically when there are prepositions involved.
The main rule for lequel is actually pretty straightforward. If you have a preposition, words like sur, avec, or pour, that comes right before your relative pronoun, you have to use lequel. Now, there is one little catch. Our specialist has to change its form to agree with the noun it's replacing, so it can become lequel, lequel, or lesquel.
Take a look at this sentence. C'est la chaise sur laquelle je m'assieds. Literally, this is the chair on which I sit. Because we have that preposition sur, and because chaise is feminine, we have to use laquelle. Qui or que just wouldn't work here. This is a job that only our specialist tool can handle.
Okay, you've officially filled your toolbox. You've got the essentials, you've got the connector, the locator, and the specialist. So, what happens when we put them all together to build something really impressive? Let's see.
Let's break this down. J'ai un ami qui parle trois langues. My friend is the subject. He's the one doing the speaking. C'est une personne que j'admire. Now that person is the object of my admiration. Sa maison, dont le jardin est magnifique, whose garden is magnificent, there's our connector, dont. Est un endroit où je vais souvent, a place where I often go. And that's our locator, où. See, each tool does its specific job, weaving all these separate ideas into one single fluid description. That is the goal.
And that's really it. You've just acquired the 5 key tools, the relative pronouns, that are going to take your French from just basic statements to rich, detailed, and flowing sentences. And remember, these aren't just boring grammar rules. They are powerful tools for real expression.
So the question really is for you now. Think about a person you look up to, or your favorite place, or a movie you just saw. How would you describe it using these new tools? What kind of masterpiece can you build with your new toolbox?
All right, welcome. Today we are going to crack one of the most notorious codes in the French language. Yep, the subjunctive. And I promise you, by the end of this, you're going to see it's way, way simpler than you think. So, does it ever feel like the subjunctive just pops up randomly, like with absolutely no rhyme or reason? If you're not in your head right now, trust me, you are not alone. It is a classic hurdle for pretty much every French learner out there. But you're in the right place, because here's the big secret. It's not just a random pile of rules. It's a system. See, the subjunctive isn't a tense. It's not about when something happens. It's a mood. And that one little shift in how you think about it, it changes everything. Okay, so before we dive into the really good stuff, let's just do a super quick refresher. Just to make sure we're all starting from the same place. So here's the most important thing to remember. We use the regular indicative mood for straight-up facts. The sun is shining. Simple, objective. But the subjunctive, that's for all the subjective stuff. Your emotions, your doubts, your wishes. It's literally the mood of your inner world. So how do you actually form it for most verbs? Well, it's actually pretty straightforward. You just grab the ils or els form of the verb in the present tense. So for parler, that's il parle. Then you chop off that ent at the end. That gives you your stem, parle. And from there, you just tack on the subjunctive endings. See? That's the basic pattern. But now for the tricky ones. All right, basics covered. Let's get to the main event. We're going to tackle the 3 most common, most important, and, yep, the most irregular verbs you absolutely have to master. Let's just call them the big 3. And we're going to kick things off with the king of all French verbs, être, to be. And let me tell you, in the subjunctive, it looks and sounds pretty different from what you're probably used to. Okay, check this out. The sound is what's really important here. It's not suis, it's sois. Let's just go through them. Que je sois, que tu sois, qu'il soit. And then the plurals are a bit different. Que nous soyons, que vous soyez, qu'il soit. Really getting that pronunciation down is so important. And here's a perfect example of it in action. Je veux que tu sois heureux. I want you to be happy. See? It's not a fact that you are happy right now. It's my wish, it's my desire for you. That's pure subjectivity, and that's exactly why we need the subjunctive. Que tu sois. Okay, next up in our big three lineup is avoir, to have. This is another one that is just an absolute essential for your French toolkit. So take a look at this one. It's que j'aille, que tu aies, qu'il ait. You can hear how similar the pronunciation is for those first three, right? Then for the plural forms, we've got que nous ayons, que vous ayez, and qu'ils aient. Honestly, this one just takes a little bit of practice before it starts to feel natural. And here we go, a perfect example of where you'd use this. Il est possible que nous ayons tort. It's possible that we're wrong. That little phrase right at the beginning, il est possible. It is possible. That's your signal. It screams doubt and uncertainty. It's not a fact, so boom, you use the subjunctive. Que nous ayons tort. All right, you ready? It's time for the final boss of the big three, the incredibly useful verb faire, to do or to make. And this one has a totally unique stem you just have to memorize. Yep, you can see it right there. The stem is fasse, so it just becomes que je fasse, que tu fasses, qu'il fasse. And then, que nous fassions, que vous fassiez, and qu'il fasse. The good news is, once you've got that fasse stem locked in your brain, it's actually pretty regular from there. This right here is such a classic subjunctive sentence. Il faut que, which means it is necessary that. It expresses a necessity, right? An obligation. A great way to think about it is that you're imposing a will or a desire on the situation. It's definitely not a simple fact, and that's what triggers the subjunctive, que je fasse. Okay, so we've covered how to form these key verbs, but the real million-dollar question is, when do you actually use them? Well, the great news is, it all boils down to three simple triggers. This right here is the core of the entire system. First up, trigger number one, emotions. Simple as that. If you're expressing happiness, sadness, fear, really any feeling about a situation, you're probably going to need the subjunctive. Just think of phrases like je suis content que, I'm happy that, or je suis triste que, I'm sad that, or j'ai peur que, I'm afraid that. All of those phrases are like giant flashing signs that an emotion is coming, and that's your classic subjunctive trigger. Okay, on to trigger number two, doubts and uncertainty. If you're not stating something as a cold, hard fact, but instead you're expressing possibility or doubt, well, it's subjunctive time. Phrases like il est possible que, it's possible that, or je doute que, I doubt that, these are total dead giveaways. Basically, anytime you're saying something isn't 100% certain, you've wandered right into subjunctive territory. And that brings us to our final trigger, number three, wishes. This is a big category. It covers wants, hopes, desires, necessities, pretty much anything where you're imposing your will onto reality. The key phrases you want to listen for are things like j'espère que, I hope that, and of course, je veux que, I want that. You see, you're not stating a fact. You're expressing a desire for things to be a certain way. Now, even with these three amazing triggers, there's one final check you have to make. I like to call it the golden rule of the subjunctive, and believe me, it is absolutely non-negotiable. And here's the deal. The subjunctive only gets used when you have two different subjects in the two parts of your sentence. Let's look at the left side here. Je veux faire. Who wants? I do. Who's doing the action? I am. One subject, so you just use the infinitive. Simple. No subjunctive needed. Now look at the right. Je veux que tu fasses. Who wants? I do. But who's doing the action? You are. See? Two different subjects, je and tu. And that is when the subjunctive becomes mandatory. This one little distinction, it's everything. Okay, I know that was a lot to take in, but we can boil this all down to a simple, practical checklist you can use every single time. So let's put it all together, shall we? Here it is, your three-step plan to conquer the subjunctive. Step 1, identify the mood. Ask yourself, Is the main phrase about an emotion, a doubt, or a wish? If the answer is yes, you move to step 2. Check the golden rule. Are there 2 different subjects involved? If the answer is yes again, then and only then do you go to step 3, conjugate. Put that verb in the subjunctive. And remember to watch out for our big 3, être, avoir, and faire. That's it. That is the entire process from start to finish. So, you see, the subjunctive isn't just some boring grammar rule you have to memorize. It's actually a tool. It's a key that unlocks a whole new level of personal expression in French. It's what allows you to share your inner world, your hopes, your fears, your feelings. So the real question now is, what are you going to do with it? What are the emotions, doubts, and wishes that you want to express? All right, so today we're going to break down a blueprint for language learners. We're looking at how to tackle a really common challenge, moving from just being able to have a conversation in French to sounding confident and professional. So have you ever felt this? You've hit that intermediate B1 level. You can order a coffee, you can chat about your vacation, but then someone asks you in French, so what do you do? And you just freeze. All of a sudden the words disappear. It's like your vocabulary just isn't up to the task. We call this the B1 plateau, and it's a real thing. And this is the absolute key. The problem isn't that you don't know French. It's that you don't know the right French for a specific professional situation. Think of it like a toolbox. You've got a hammer, but what you really need is a screwdriver. This is all about targeted skill building, getting you the right tools for the job. So how does this blueprint work? Well, like any good plan, it starts with a solid foundation. And in language learning, that means vocabulary. But, and this is crucial, it's not just about learning more words, it's about learning the right words. Let's take a perfect example, entretien d'embauche. This isn't just some random phrase, it's a key that unlocks an entire professional world. The lesson plan we're looking at is filled with these kinds of high-impact terms that you absolutely need for those important conversations. Now, what's really smart about this approach is the structure. See how it's not just a giant, messy list of words? They're organized into logical groups. This is so much more effective because our brains are wired to see patterns and make connections. When you learn words in context like this, you're way more likely to remember them when you're actually under pressure. Okay, so you've got the words, great. But words by themselves are kind of like a pile of bricks. You need the mortar to put them together and actually build something. In language, that mortar is grammar. It's the structure that gives your words power. And this slide just nails it. Look at the difference. On the left, I can speak French. Sure, it's correct, it's fine. But on the right, I am capable of speaking French fluently. Now, that sounds professional. It's more sophisticated, more confident. This is exactly the kind of linguistic upgrade this lesson is designed to give you.
So, the lesson doesn't try to teach you all the grammar. Instead, it focuses on 3 powerful structures that give you the most bang for your buck. First, using savoir for skills you've learned, like I know how to code. Second, using vouloir to talk about your goals. And third, that tricky but super useful subjunctive with il faut que to discuss requirements. Each one is a specific tool for a specific task.
So we've got the vocabulary and we've got the grammar, but you can read a book about how to swim all day long. That doesn't mean you won't sink when you jump in the pool. You have to actually practice. And that's the final critical piece of this blueprint. Just listen to this exchange. It's straight from a role play in the lesson. What are your qualifications? I know how to manage projects and I am capable of working under pressure. See how it all just comes together? You've got the vocabulary, gérer des projets, and the structures, je sais and je suis capable de. This is the goal, speaking fluently and confidently right when it counts. And the practice is laser-focused on 2 scenarios you're very likely to encounter. First, that classic job interview where you really need to sell yourself. And second, an academic discussion, which requires a slightly different but still very professional kind of language. This prepares you for the real world. So, when you put all 3 parts of this blueprint together, what's the end result? It's a total transformation. You go from being the person who freezes up when asked about your job to someone who can confidently talk about your skills, your experience, and your ambitions. You're not just someone who knows French, you're someone who can use French in a professional setting. So the takeaways here are really clear. At the end of the day, you're not just memorizing words. You're learning to use professional vocabulary accurately, apply the right grammatical structures to sound polished, and walk into those tricky conversations with real confidence. Basically, you've smashed right through that B1 plateau. What we've looked at today is more than just a lesson plan. It's a model for how to approach targeted learning. It shows us that if you break down a huge challenge, like professional fluency, into these 3 parts, vocabulary, structure, and practice, it becomes totally manageable. So the question is, what other language walls could you break down using a blueprint just like this one? So, if you're learning French, you've probably hit this wall, right? It's that frustrating moment when you realize you know tons of words, but you just can't quite say what you really mean. Well, today, we are going to bridge that gap. We're moving beyond just knowing the words to actually speaking French with real nuance. Yeah, that feeling is super common. You've got the vocabulary, you know the grammar rules, but then you get into a real conversation and something's missing. You're stuck right in that gap between what you know and what you can actually express. Well, that missing piece, it's all about nuance, the ability to talk about what you can do, what you must do, and what you want to do. And in French, believe it or not, the keys to unlocking all of that expression are 3 essential verbs: pouvoir, devoir, and vouloir. All right, let's dive into our first key, pouvoir. This is going to be your go-to verb for talking about what's possible and what you're capable of. At its core, pouvoir kind of has 2 main jobs. First, it describes what you are physically or mentally able to do, your abilities. But it's also the exact same verb you use to ask for or be given permission to do something. Now, this is where it gets really interesting because context changes everything. Over on the left, je peux nager just means I can swim. It's a simple statement of ability. But on the right, je peux entrer, that shifts the meaning completely to may I enter? It's a request. See that? Same verb, 2 totally different social functions. Okay, so to get you using this like today, here are the essential I forms. In the present, it's je peux. If you're talking about something you were able to do in the past, it's j'ai pu. And looking ahead to a future possibility, you'll use je pourrais. All right, let's move on to our next key and see how these ideas build on each other. Next up is devoir, which is a real powerhouse verb for talking about necessity and logic. So just like pouvoir, devoir has this kind of dual personality. Its main job, the one you learn first, is to express obligation, all the things you must do or have to do. But it also has this more subtle side. It's used to express a strong guess or a probability, what you figure must be true. And you can really see that difference right here. Je dois partir is a clear, strong obligation. I must leave. No question about it. But look at the other side. Il doit pleuvoir translates to it must be raining. You're not ordering the clouds around. You're making a logical guess based on what you see. It's an assumption with a lot of confidence. And again, here are the forms you're going to use all the time when you're talking about your own responsibilities. In the present, it's je dois. For a past obligation, you'd say j'ai dû. And for something you will have to do in the future, it's je devrais. And that brings us to our third and final key, vouloir. This is the verb of wanting things, of desire, and maybe most importantly for getting by in daily life, politeness. The main job of vouloir is super simple. It's how you say you want something. But, and this is the magic trick, with just a tiny change in tense, it becomes your single most important tool for being polite in French. Let me show you how. So this right here is absolutely crucial. Je veux un café is I want a coffee. It's direct, it's clear, and honestly, in some situations, it can sound a little blunt. But if you change it to je voudrais aider, using what's called the conditional tense, it softens it to I would like to help. Boom. Instantly more polite, more formal. Mastering this one little change is a total game changer for how you sound. So, to talk about what you want across time, you'll use je veux for right now, j'ai voulu for a past desire, and je voudrais for something you'll want in the future. But just remember that je voudrais, that's your golden key to politeness. Okay, so we've met our 3 keys. Now it's time for the master rule. There's one simple, incredibly powerful piece of grammar that makes all of them work together perfectly. Forget all those complicated grammar charts. To use all 3 of these verbs correctly, every single time, you really only need to remember one thing. That's it. Just one. And here it is. After you use pouvoir, devoir, or vouloir, the very next verb, the action verb, always stays in its original, unconjugated form. That's the infinitive. So you only conjugate the first verb. Je dois étudier. Je veux manger. Je peux parler. It's honestly that simple.
Let's see this master rule in the wild. Check out this sentence. I must prepare an exam this week. Last year, I was able to learn a lot. You see, we conjugated doit and I peux, but préparer and apprendre, the actual actions, they just stay in their original form. That's the rule, right there at work. So, why does all of this matter so much? Because with just these 3 verbs, you now have a precise toolkit for talking about your own life. You can use devoir to talk about your responsibilities, pouvoir to talk about your opportunities and your skills, and vouloir to share your hopes and dreams. You've literally just unlocked a whole new level of self-expression. So, you have the keys now, the 3 essential keys to unlock a more nuanced, more confident, and just a more authentic way of speaking French. The only question left is, what are you going to unlock first?
All right, let's get into it. Have you ever wondered what it really takes to go from just, ordering a coffee in another language to actually debating the big ideas that are shaping our world? Well, today we're going to pull back the curtain and deconstruct a blueprint of an expert language lesson that's designed to do exactly that.
I mean, that's the real question, isn't it? This is the true test of fluency. It's one thing to say the sky is blue, but it is a whole other ballgame to share a nuanced opinion on artificial intelligence, or misinformation, or the future of work. That jump from simple to sophisticated, that's what we're breaking down today.
So here's our game plan. First, we're going to look at the challenge of what fluency means today. Then, we'll unpack the toolkit this lesson gives you, the specific words, and the grammatical structures. And finally, we'll see how it all clicks together in a real conversation to build that confidence you actually need.
Okay, so let's start with this idea of the modern fluency challenge. See, once you hit that intermediate B1 level, the goalposts totally shift. It's not about survival phrases anymore. It's about getting the tools to analyze and really engage with the complex world happening all around you.
And you've got to pay attention to the wording of the goal here, analyzing and debating. This isn't just about describing what you see anymore. It's about being able to form and then defend a point of view on current events. That is a massive, massive step up in your communication skills.
So how on earth do you start building a skill like that? Well, it all starts at the foundation, vocabulary. I mean, you can't debate what you can't name, right? So the very first step is to arm learners with a super curated arsenal of words perfect for these modern conversations.
Now, this is what's so smart about the lesson. It doesn't just throw a dictionary at you. It organizes the vocabulary into 3 essential pillars for understanding the world today: social issues, media, and technology. So you're getting words like chômage for unemployment, fake news, and intelligence artificielle for AI. This makes the language immediately relevant and gives you the power to talk about what's actually going on right now.
Okay, so you've got the words. Great. But how do you put them together so you sound informed and not just, like you're spouting an opinion? This next part, this is the secret sauce. It's all about learning the grammatical frameworks that turn a simple sentence into a really sophisticated observation.
The lesson gives you 3 key phrases that are kind of like different lenses for looking at the world. First up is on dit que, which means it is said that. Think of this as your go-to tool for tapping into what people are generally saying, the buzz, the common wisdom. It lets you bring up an idea without having to claim it as a hard fact.
The next layer of nuance you get is with il paraît que, or it seems that. This is for talking about something that you've heard or that appears to be true, but you're not 100% certain. It's the language of emerging trends, and it adds this perfect, subtle touch of, I'm paying attention, but I'm still weighing the evidence.
And the final piece is the real power move for sounding credible, selon, which just means according to. This is how you bring in a source, whether it's an expert, a study, or a news article. And suddenly, your statement isn't just your opinion anymore. It's an informed position that carries real weight.
And check out the difference this makes in practice. On the left, you have a really flat statement. Young people like TikTok. Okay. But on the right, using our new structure, it becomes on dit que les jeunes aiment TikTok. See? Now you're not just stating a fact, you're commenting on a social trend. It's a tiny change in words, but it's a huge leap in sophistication.
So, we've got the words, we've got the grammar,
But all that knowledge doesn't mean much if you can't actually use it when you're talking to someone. This is where the lesson design is just brilliant, because it builds that crucial bridge from just knowing things in theory to using them in a real, spontaneous conversation.
The way this is structured is just so incredibly smart. It creates this safe, supportive environment that builds your confidence step by step. You start with a really low-pressure chat with a partner, just getting comfortable. Then you move up to a more dynamic role play, putting the language into a realistic situation. It's all about creating a safe space to try things out, maybe mess up a little, because that's the absolute fastest way to get good at something.
And here's what that looks like in action. You have one student, maybe they're playing a journalist, and they introduce a trend using one of those key phrases. It is said that remote work is the future. Then the other student jumps in with their own analysis. According to me, it's practical, but you need a good balance. It's this perfect miniature debate where they're using every single tool they just learned.
So, after all of this, the vocabulary, the frameworks, the practice, what's the real payoff? What does a student actually get out of this? Well, it's so much more than just a few new phrases. It's a fundamental change in how they can communicate with the world.
And here it is, the end result. In a single lesson, a learner goes from just knowing individual words to weaving them together into a real argument. They can now use relevant, modern vocabulary, apply nuanced grammar, and actually discuss and debate real-world topics. But honestly, the most important outcome of all? It's confidence. This is how you build real fluency, one brick at a time.
So that leaves us with one final thought. We've just deconstructed the entire blueprint for how to teach complex communication. So now I'm turning it over to you. With these tools, what's the first big trend you'd want to dive into and really debate? The future of AI? The gig economy? The choice is all yours. Ever find yourself wanting to talk about the future in French, but you need to say more than just what will happen? You want to talk about what will have happened by a certain time? Well, getting that little distinction right is a total game changer, and today we are going to master it. Let's get into it.
So, let me ask you a question. What will you have accomplished by the end of this year? See that? What will you have accomplished? That very question uses the exact future tense we're going to get into today. It's all about looking back from a point in the future. Pretty cool, right? All right, so when it comes to talking about what's next, French gives us a couple of really powerful tools. We're going to break down the two key tenses you absolutely need to know, the futur simple and the futur antérieur.
And don't worry, we're going to ease into this. We'll start with the foundation, the tense you're going to use like 90% of the time. Once we've got that down solid, we'll level up to the more nuanced stuff that's going to make your French sound incredibly precise.
Okay, first up, the foundation. Let's talk about the simple future, or le futur simple. This is your workhorse, your go-to tense for just about anything and everything that's coming up.
So what's its main job? Well, it's for predictions, like demain il pleuvra, tomorrow it will rain, or for your intentions, something like je voyagerai en Asie, I will travel to Asia. It's simple, it's direct, and you absolutely have to know it.
And here is the best part. You're going to love this. For most verbs, it's ridiculously easy to form. Unlike the present tense, where you're always chopping off endings, here you just take the whole verb, the infinitive, and you literally just stick the right ending on it. That's it. Let's take a quick look. You take the verb parler, to speak. To say I will speak, you just add the ending for I, which is I, a, and boom, you get je parlerai. The formula is just infinitive plus ending. Super straightforward. Of course, you knew it was coming, right? It wouldn't be French without a few irregular verbs. But look, the good news is, it's just a handful of really common ones, and only their stem changes. The endings, that a, as, a pattern, stay exactly the same. So you just memorize these few stems, like ser for être, or for avoir, and you're golden. Okay, foundation is built. You feeling good? Ready to level up? Because it's time to meet the future anterior. I like to call this the before future, and trust me, this is the one that's going to make your French sound seriously impressive. Now, this tense has a very specific mission. It's not just about the future in general. It's about an action that will have been finished before something else in the future even gets started. It's all about sequence and completion. Now, if you're looking at this and thinking, hey, that looks familiar, it should. It's built just like the Passé Composé. You take a helper verb, avoir or être, and add the past participle. The only twist is that your helper verb is in the future, so you're basically creating a past in the future.
Check out this example. D'ici décembre, j'aurai fini mes études. This is so much more powerful than just saying, you'll finish in December. It means that by the time December rolls around, the act of finishing is already done. It's in the past from that future perspective.
And now for the really cool part. These tenses are not meant to be used in isolation. They're a team. They're designed to work together to paint a really rich, detailed picture of what's to come. Let's see how they interact.
So let's put them side by side. The future simple is pretty straightforward. It's what will happen. Je voyagerai, I will travel. The futur antérieur, though, is about what will have happened before that. J'aurai économisé, I will have saved. One sets the main event, the other tells you what prep work is already done. Let's walk through this on a timeline. Imagine your friend is coming over. Their arrival, quand tu arriveras, that's a future event, so we use the future simple. But in the time before they get there, you will have already eaten. J'aurai déjà mangé. See that? The future antérieur action, the eating, is complete before the future simple action, the arriving, even happens.
And hey, here's a little pro tip. Keep your eyes peeled for signal words. Phrases like d'ici là, meaning by then, or especially quand, meaning when, are huge clues that this two-tense team is about to show up. Quand tu arriveras, j'aurai fini mes devoirs. When you arrive, I will have finished my homework. That when just sets the whole sequence up perfectly.
So, we've covered the foundation, and we've leveled up. Let's do a quick recap of the most important takeaways, so you can lock this in and start describing your own French future.
Okay, let's boil it all down. Future simple, that's your go-to for general future events. Je travaillerai, I will work. But the second you need to say that one thing will be finished before another thing starts, that's your cue for the future antérieur. J'aurai appris, I will have learned. Use them together and you're telling a complete, sophisticated story about what's coming next.
And there you have it. You've officially got the tools to talk about your plans, your goals, and your predictions with amazing clarity. So I'll just leave you with this one question. Now that you can, what future are you going to start describing?
All right, let's talk about one of the coolest parts of the French language, the conditional. Seriously, we're not just drilling grammar today. We're getting into the language of dreams, possibilities, and all those what might have been moments. Let's get right into it. So think about it for a second. What would you do? Travel the world? Quit your job? That simple question, that whole what-if game we all play, well, that's exactly what the conditional is all about. It's basically the official tense of your imagination. You see, the conditional lets you step into these alternate realities. It's how you can politely ask for a coffee, give a friend some advice, or even just sit and wonder about a past that could have been totally different. It's like a grammatical time machine and a daydream machine all rolled into one beautiful package. Okay, so first up we have the present conditional. I absolutely love calling this the daydream tense, and for good reason. It's all about what could happen either right now or sometime in the future. It's full of hope, it's all hypothetical, and you are going to use it all the time. So what's its job, really? Well, you can think of it in three main buckets. Bucket number 1, being polite. Bucket 2, giving advice, like saying you should probably. And bucket 3, exploring all those classic if this, then that scenarios. Super, super useful. So how do you actually make it? The formula is actually pretty straightforward. You start with the verb's infinitive, its basic to do something form, and then you just slap on the endings from the imparfait tense. That's AIS, AIS, AIT, and so on. That's it. But of course, it's French, so there are going to be some exceptions. The good news, though, is that if you've already learned the future tense, you already know these. They're the exact same irregular stems. And what you're seeing here are the big ones, the heavy hitters you'll use constantly, like aller changing to IR, and être becoming ser.
So let's see what this looks like out in the wild. For politeness, instead of saying a blunt, I want a coffee, you get the much softer, much nicer, je voudrais un café. And for those daydreams, you set the scene. Si j'étais riche, if I were rich, and then you say what would happen. Je voyagerais, I would travel. See how it just opens up that world of possibility?
All right, now let's switch gears. If the present conditional is our daydream machine, then the past conditional, well, that's our time machine. This is what we use to go back and explore a past that never actually happened. Yeah, this is the tense for looking back. It's for all the shouldas and coulda-haves and if-onlys. We're talking strictly about things in the past that didn't happen and can't happen now, because that moment is gone. Now, building this one is a two-step dance. And the cool part is, you already know the first step. You just take your helping verb, that's going to be avoir or être, and put it into the present conditional we just covered. So avoir becomes aurait, and être becomes serait. Then you just add the past participle of your main verb. Done. And this is where you can feel the real punch of the time machine tense. It expresses regret so perfectly. J'aurais dû étudier plus. I should have studied more. We've all been there, right? Or you can completely rewrite history. Si j'avais su, if I had known, j'aurais agi différemment. I would have acted differently. It's pretty powerful. Okay, let's put them side by side because this really makes it click. The present conditional is all about what could be. It's for your dreams, your advice, things that could still happen. The past conditional, that's the world of what could have been. Regrets, reflections, alternate histories. That's the core difference right there. So we've got our two main tenses down, but to really unlock their potential, you've got to introduce them to their best friend, the si clause. Si just means if, and it's the little word that sets up the entire hypothetical world. It's a real superpower. Think of the si clause as the trigger. It's the part of the sentence that lays out the condition, the if this happens part. Then, the main part of the sentence, which uses our conditional tense, gives you the result, the then that happens part. They're a team. You need both to make the whole thought work. And here's the best part. This isn't guesswork. It follows two golden rules, two formulas. As you can see right here, if your si clause is in the imperfect tense, then your result clause has to be in the present conditional. And if your si clause is in the plus que parfait, then your result is going to be in the past conditional. It's a perfect, reliable system. Let's see these formulas in action, because this is where it all comes together. Look at the first one. Si j'étais président, that's our si plus imparfait. And what does it trigger? The present conditional. Je protégerais l'environnement. Now the second one. Si j'avais étudié, that's si plus que parfait. So the result has to be in the past conditional. J'aurais réussi. See? It's like perfect grammar math. Okay, so we've gone through the ideas, how to build them, and how they work together. But really, the most important part is getting your hands dirty and making this knowledge your own. It's time for you to start building your own what-if sentences. So if there's one thing you take away from all this, let it be this simple idea. You have two main tools in your what-if toolkit. For daydreams about right now or the future, you're going to grab the present conditional. And to jump in that time machine and think about the past, you'll use the past conditional. Daydream versus time machine. So there you have it. You are now officially equipped with the language of possibilities. So I'll just leave you with this to chew on. What's the first dream? The first regret? Or maybe just the first polite request? What's the first what if you're going to say in French?
You know that feeling when you're learning a new language, you get stuck on this frustrating plateau. Sure, you can order a coffee, you can ask for directions, but the second you want to talk about a movie you just saw or a book you loved, you feel like you're right back at square one. Well, today, we're going to deconstruct exactly how to make that leap. We're using a real French lesson plan as our blueprint to unlock a whole new level of mastery.
And this, right here, is the million-dollar question, isn't it? This is the difference between just, getting by in a language and actually communicating in it. Moving past a simple, I like it, or it was good, is the absolute key to having deeper conversations, to really expressing who you are. So, how do we build that bridge?
In the world of language learning, this journey actually has a name. It's the leap from B1, which is intermediate, to B2, or upper intermediate. And it's all about moving from just making simple statements to actually backing them up with some real substance. Let's break down exactly how it's done.
Okay, look at this. This shows the gap perfectly. On the left, you've got the B1 speaker. J'aime le film. I like the film. Nothing wrong with that. It's correct. But then look at the right. The B2 speaker offers a real critique. They're saying, the plot is a little slow, but the screenplay is captivating. You see that difference? It's nuanced, it's balanced, and it actually invites a real conversation.
So what this really boils down to is a shift from being a reporter of your own feelings to becoming a lawyer for them. You're not just saying you like something anymore, you're building a case for why you feel that way. And that skill is absolutely essential for any kind of interesting cultural discussion.
All right, so where do we even begin? Well, the very first step, according to our lesson plan, is to build an arsenal. You can't go into a battle of wits without the right weapons, right? And in this case, our weapons are words. Precise, targeted, cultural, vocabulary.
This is the foundation right here. So instead of just saying film, now you have réalisateur for director or scénario for screenplay. Instead of just book, you can talk about the auteur, the author, or the intrigue, the plot. These are the specific tools you need to take culture apart with real precision.
But here's the thing, just seeing the words isn't going to cut it. The method is all about actively making them yours. So you start by matching words to definitions. That builds basic recognition. Then you create your own sentences, which forces your brain to actually use the words in a real context. And finally, you brainstorm related terms, which expands that whole web of knowledge. This isn't just about memorizing, it's about integration.
So, once you have the words, the raw materials, you need the blueprints to put them together into something powerful. This next part is all about mastering the grammatical structures that turn that simple vocabulary into smart, sophisticated critiques.
So here's our starting point again. The film is good. I mean, where do you go from there? It's a conversational dead end. It's a wall.
And now, look at the after. The whole architecture of this sentence is different. It starts with a personal perspective, it seems to me, then it gives a positive point, original, and follows it up with a contrasting negative point, predictable plot. See, this isn't a wall. It's an open door to a fantastic debate.
And this is your new toolkit for adding that nuance. Phrases like il me semble que signal it's your personal take. Relative pronouns like don't lets you pack way more detail into one elegant sentence, like a film whose story is moving. And then there's the subjunctive, which lets you express emotion like I'm happy that this film is so popular. Each one of these is a special tool for a very specific job.
This example here really highlights the power of connectors. Words like cependant for however they're the calling card of a balanced critique. They show that you've thought about more than one side of the issue, which, let's be honest, is the very essence of thinking critically.
Okay, you've got the vocabulary and you've got the structures. Now what? You have to use them. Welcome to the practice arena. This is where all that theory gets forged into actual skill through some real, active conversation.
So the training starts with open-ended prompts just like these. But notice something? They all have an implied or an explicit why at the end. They are specifically designed to push you past a simple yes or no and force you to break out that new B2 level toolkit to defend your position.
And then things get even more interesting with role-playing. One person plays the critic, making a bold statement. The other person acts as the interviewer, digging for more details, maybe even challenging what they're saying. This kind of dynamic back and forth is what really simulates a real-world debate and builds your fluency and confidence like nothing else.
So, after building that arsenal, mastering the techniques, and sparring in the practice arena, we finally arrive at the transformation. This is where the learner truly becomes the critic, able to express really complex thoughts with total clarity and confidence. And it all comes together in the ultimate test. The final assignment in this whole process is to move from speaking to writing and to produce a structured, coherent critical review of something, a film, a book, whatever.
Now, you might see 100 to 150 words and think that's not very long, but that's actually the whole point. With a limit like that, you don't have any room to ramble. You are forced to be concise, to choose your powerful new words carefully, and to structure your argument effectively using all those advanced grammar forms we talked about.
So what's the end result of this whole structured process? You walk away with a complete toolkit. You're not just saying what you like anymore. You're actually analyzing culture. You've made the leap from simple statements to substantive, defensible opinions. That right there, that's the B2 transformation.
You know, what we've walked through today isn't really just a French lesson. It's a blueprint. It's a blueprint for deconstructing any complex skill, breaking it down into its core parts, the vocabulary, the techniques, and the practice. It's a proven method for achieving mastery. So the real question to ask yourself is, what plateau are you going to conquer next?
All right, let's talk about one of the biggest hurdles for any French learner, that super frustrating intermediate plateau. We're going to map out a clear strategy to take your French from just kind of getting by at a B1 level to really expressing yourself with confidence and precision. You know, that B2 level. So, let's dive in. Does this feel familiar? You can handle the day-to-day stuff, right? Ordering a coffee, asking for directions, no problem. But then you try to explain why you were late or talk about a movie you loved with any real detail and you just hit a wall. You've got the words, but the nuance, that deeper meaning, it just isn't there. Well, that feeling has a name. It's the B1 plateau.
And really, that's the heart of the jump from B1 to B2. The goal isn't just about making yourself understood anymore. It's about being able to captivate someone, to share complex thoughts, to let your personality actually shine through the language. It's about shifting from just functional to truly fluent. So how do you actually get there? You might think it's about cramming thousands of new vocabulary words into your brain, but honestly, the secret is way simpler and a lot more strategic. It really comes down to mastering two specific kinds of grammatical tools that are going to unlock a whole new level of precision for you. And here they are, our two keys: mastering complex prepositions and applying nuanced adverbs. Seriously, by focusing your energy right here, you get the biggest bang for your buck. This isn't about learning more, it's about learning smarter. So let's break down that first one. Okay, so let's tackle our first key. I want you to think of these as the essential connectors in your sentences. They're the tools that let you explain the relationship between ideas, cause and effect or effort and outcome. They turn a simple statement into a really sophisticated explanation. This is what takes you from just saying what happened to explaining why it happened. To put it simply, these are just phrases that link your ideas together. So instead of saying, "It rained, we stayed inside," which is fine, you can say, "We stayed inside because of the rain." See that? That little phrase, "because of," is what gives your sentence depth and logic. That is the B1 to B2 difference. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. A B1 learner might just use parce que for everything, but a B2 speaker, they know the difference. You use à cause de when you're talking about a negative reason, like being late because of traffic. But you use grâce à for a positive one, like thanks to your help, I did it. And en raison de is a bit more formal, like a train being canceled due to a strike. The whole point is picking the perfect word for the context. That's precision.
And this example just perfectly illustrates how you can show contrast. The phrase en dépit de means despite. It immediately sets up a story of overcoming some kind of obstacle. It doesn't just state two separate facts: she was tired and she worked. No, it connects them to tell a much more compelling story. Now that is B2 level expression. Okay, time for our second key, adverbs. Now, if prepositions are what build the logical skeleton of your sentences, adverbs are what paint the picture. They're what add all the color, the detail, and the emotion that really make your descriptions come alive. I mean, think about it. You can say, "He runs." Okay, sure. But how does he run? Does he run vite, quickly, lentement, slowly, or maybe even joyeusement, joyfully? Adverbs give you the power to turn a really basic action into a super vivid image in the listener's mind. And here's the best part. Forming a lot of these adverbs is actually pretty straightforward. You just take the feminine form of the adjective and tack on ment at the end. So, calme becomes calmement, calmly. It's a simple little rule that unlocks hundreds of amazing descriptive words. And just look at how versatile they are. Think of it like a control panel for your language, right? You can adjust the manner dial to describe how something is done. You can tweak the time dial with words like récemment for recently. And you can fine-tune the intensity with the degree slider using words like totalement, completely, or presque, almost. Okay, so we've got our building blocks. Those are the prepositions. And we've got our decorative details, the adverbs. But how do we actually start building with them? Well, the key is to stop just passively knowing them and start actively using them. And this is exactly how you do it. You can't just memorize lists of words. You've got to use them in real situations. The goal here is to literally build new pathways in your brain. So through things like pair discussions, role-playing, or even just writing short paragraphs, you're forcing yourself to grab and use these new tools until it just becomes second nature. Check out this fantastic, super practical example. You're explaining why you were late and how you drove, all in one smooth conversation. First, you explain the cause. À cause de la neige, je suis arrivé tard. Because of the snow, I was late. Then you describe the manner. J'ai conduit prudemment. I drove carefully. You see? This is exactly how these pieces weave together in a natural flow-in conversation. So let's bring this all home. Your path forward from that B1 plateau, it's not some long, confusing uphill battle. It's a targeted, strategic push that's all about one thing: precision. And if you take away only one thing today, please let it be this: fluency is not a numbers game. it is not about how many words you know. It's about using the words you have with real skill and accuracy. And mastering these prepositions and adverbs, that's what gives you the power to do exactly that. This is the goal, B2. This is a level where you don't just survive in French, you actually thrive. A level where you can express your thoughts, your opinions, and your stories with all the clarity and nuance they deserve. And you know what? It is totally achievable with the right focus. So I'm going to leave you with a little challenge to get you started. Using one of these complex prepositions or a nuanced adverb you learned today, think about something you've wanted to explain in French, but you just couldn't quite find the words. So my question to you is, what complex idea will you express first? You know that feeling when you're trying to make a point in French and you keep reaching for parce que and mais over and over again? Yeah, we've all been there. But if you really want to sound convincing, if you want to argue with real nuance, you need a bigger toolkit. So let's dive in and seriously upgrade your French arguments. Just look at the difference here. The first sentence, it's fine. It gets the job done. But the second one, it's just on another level. It uses puisque, which is like since, to establish a fact we both already know. Then it brings in this perfect contrast with en revanche, or on the other hand. And that right there, that's the difference between just saying something and actually building a persuasive argument. So the big question is, how do we make that jump from basic to a true B2 level? Well, I'll tell you, it's not about memorizing endless lists of vocabulary. It's about mastering a few really powerful connectors that act like the architecture for your ideas. And that is exactly what we are going to break down right now. All right, first up, explaining cause and consequence. Think of these as the absolute building blocks of logic. Every single strong argument comes down to this simple foundation, explaining why something is happening and what is happening as a result. Let's get this part down first. Okay, this table shows the subtle but super important differences. We all default to parce que, right? But check this out. Ka is much better for formal writing, and puisque is a really smart move when the reason is kind of obvious or already known to your audience. Same thing for consequences. Donc is your everyday so, but par conséquent gives your point some serious weight, especially in a debate or an essay. Oh, I love this example. Si bien que isn't just so. It creates this powerful, almost inevitable link between the action and the result. She studied so hard that, of course, she succeeded. It's a fantastic way to add this sense of dramatic certainty to whatever point you're making. Okay, next section, mastering the counterargument. This is the real key to persuasion. See, a truly great argument isn't a one-way street. The most convincing people are the ones who can acknowledge the other side of the coin. And that's where opposition connectors come in. They show you've actually thought through all the angles. And again, it's all about picking the right tool for the job. Cependant is your all-purpose, however. Néanmoins is a bit more formal. You use it when you want to gracefully admit a small point before making your own much stronger one. And en revanche is just perfect for when you're presenting a balanced, side-by-side comparison of two ideas. And this just illustrates that balance perfectly. En revanche works so well here because it's not saying one thing is good and the other is bad. It's just presenting two contrasting facts about the city. Hey, it's lively and it's noisy. It's clean, it's direct, and it's really effective. All right, time for the fun part. Building a persuasive argument, putting it all together. We have our individual tools, our connectors. Now let's actually construct a complete, persuasive argument from the ground up. So let's use a real-world issue, like phones in schools, and build our argument. Step 1, we state the problem, the cause. Super simple, because cell phones distract students. And step 2, we add the logical consequence. Therefore, there need to be clear rules for their use. See? It's a direct, logical line from A to B. But a truly great argument doesn't just stop there. And here it is, the final, crucial step. We introduce the opposition. However, they are also useful tools for learning. That one word, cependant, just elevates this whole thing from a simple opinion to a sophisticated, balanced point. So look what we did. In just 3 steps, using 3 simple connectors, we've gone from a basic statement to a persuasive argument that acknowledges complexity. You've stated a problem, you've proposed a solution, and you've shown you understand the other side. Now that is a B2 level argument. So, let's wrap all this up into your essential toolkit. Think of these as the connectors that really matter, the ones you can start using today to build way smarter, way more persuasive arguments. Seriously, forget trying to memorize dozens of words, just focus on these. For cause, level up to the formal car and the logical puisque. For consequence, add some authority with par conséquent and real impact with si bien que. And for opposition, bring in the formal néanmoins and the balanced en revanche.
And remember, these are not just fancy words you sprinkle into a sentence. They are the actual architecture of a smart argument. They guide your listener through your thought process, making your points clear, compelling, and honestly, a lot harder to disagree with.
So now it's your turn. You've got this new toolkit. So think about a topic you're passionate about, something you could really argue for. What's the first persuasive argument you're going to go out and build?
All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're not going to teach you a language. Nope. We're doing something way more interesting. We're going to pull back the curtain and show you the actual architecture, the blueprint behind how you truly master one. We are deconstructing fluency itself. I mean, think about that for a second. How do you make that jump? From being a tourist to a thinker, from just getting by with basic phrases to diving into a complex, nuanced debate. That leap, it isn't about memorizing more words. It's about having the right system for learning. And that's something most apps and flashcards just never get to. So in the world of language learning, this big jump is often called the B2 level challenge. This is the point where you stop talking about what you did yesterday and you start tackling big, abstract ideas. It is a whole new ballgame. And here it is. This is the mountain we have to climb. The real goal isn't just to survive a conversation about, say, healthcare or the environment. It's to actually lead it, to discuss, to debate, to persuade someone with real precision. And that requires a completely different kind of toolkit. So, what's the first piece of our blueprint? Well, it all starts with getting the right materials. I mean, you can't build a complex machine with just a basic screwdriver, right? You need specialized tools. And in language, those tools are thematic words. This is where we go way beyond just random lists of vocab. Let's start with our first domain, health. Picture this. You walk into a doctor's office. Just saying, "I feel bad," isn't really going to cut it. You need the specific vocabulary to describe symptoms, to understand a diagnosis, and to talk about a treatment plan. Just think about how a single powerful word like diagnostic completely changes the conversation. It's not just a fancy label, it's a whole concept. It lifts the entire discussion from just, simple complaints to a structured problem-solving dialogue. Now that's the power of having specialized vocabulary. Okay, let's move on to our next domain. When we're talking about the environment, using vague phrases like pollution is bad doesn't really get us very far, does it? To really get into a debate about sustainability, you need to speak the language of the subject itself. Take a term like empreinte carbon or carbon footprint. See, this isn't just another word to memorize, it's a framework. It lets you quantify, compare, and actually discuss solutions in a meaningful way. It becomes the anchor for the entire debate. And finally, we get to maybe the most abstract and challenging domain of all. Ethics. How do you even argue about what's right or wrong? How do you debate ideas like justice or responsibility? This requires a vocabulary that can handle pure, abstract concepts. And the word dilemma is a perfect example of this. It frames a problem not as a simple choice between good and bad, but as a complex conflict of values. Just having this one word in your toolkit lets you articulate the very heart of a tricky ethical problem. So, you see, the very first step to advanced fluency is building these little thematic toolkits. Whether you're talking about a medical diagnostic, a community's empreinte carbone, or a moral consequence, you have to have the key terms to unlock the conversation. The specialized vocabulary is your foundation. But vocabulary on its own is just a pile of bricks. You need the mortar to actually build something with them. In language, that's grammar. But hold on, we're not talking about boring conjugation tables here. We're talking about grammar as the engine that drives nuance, opinion, and complex thought. So let's forget the textbook rules for a second and just focus on what these grammatical structures actually do. On one hand, you've got the subjunctive. This is your tool for expressing necessity and strong subjective opinions, for saying what must be done.
And on the other hand, you have the conditional. That's the language of what if. It's your tool for exploring all kinds of possibilities and hypothetical situations. Now check this out. Using the subjunctive here, il faut que, it completely transforms this sentence from a simple statement into a real call to action. It gives it a sense of urgency, of moral necessity. It's not just saying we protect the environment, it's saying it is absolutely essential that we do. You can feel the difference, right? And here, the conditional just opens up a whole new dimension. Si j'étais médecin. If I were a doctor. This structure lets you step into a hypothetical role, to problem solve, to critique, to imagine totally different outcomes. This is the language of strategy and debate. Okay, so we've got our specialized words. We have our grammatical engine, but tools are pretty useless until you actually start using them. And that brings us to the crucial third part of our blueprint, putting it all into practice through simulation. This is where it all clicks. In these role plays, you're not just reciting words from a list, you're using them with a purpose. The patient uses their health vocabulary, the doctor responds with the right medical terms and uses the subjunctive to give necessary advice. The activist uses the subjunctive for their big call to action, and then the citizen pushes back using the conditional to raise hypothetical problems. And this right here, this is the moment of truth in any learning process. This simulation is the test flight. It's where all that abstract knowledge about vocabulary and grammar gets forged under a little bit of pressure into a real, functional skill that you can actually go out and use. So now let's zoom all the way out and put it all together. What we've just walked through isn't just a fancy French lesson. It's a universal blueprint for mastering any complex skill. It's a formula you can apply to pretty much anything you want to learn at a really high level. And here it is, the whole thing deconstructed. Step 1, you build your toolkit with specialized knowledge. Step 2, you master the functional structure that lets you use that knowledge with nuance. And step 3, you put it all into practice through real-world simulation. Knowledge, structure, application. That 3-step process is the engine of mastery. So, as we wrap up, I'm going to leave you with this question. Forget language for just a moment. Think about learning to code, or learning how to negotiate, or even understanding financial markets. How could you apply this exact blueprint, specialized knowledge, functional structure, and practical application to master that? The formula is yours. Now go build something with it.
Have you ever felt like your French sentences are, well, technically correct, but just a little bit clunky? A little too long? Today, we're going to fix that. We are going to unlock the formula that takes those long, repetitive sentences and turns them into the short, elegant French you hear from native speakers. Let's dive in.
I mean, just look at the difference on the screen. On the left, you've got a sentence that works, sure. But on the right, that's fluent. That's concise. We've basically cut the sentence in half without losing any meaning. And that, right there, is our goal. So the big question is, how do you actually make that jump? How do you get from the before to the after? Well, I promise you, it's not some kind of magic. It's a system. And in this explainer, we are going to break that system down piece by piece so you can start using it right away.
All right, section 1. Let's start this journey from clunky to concise. And you know, the secret isn't about memorizing a ton of new vocabulary. Nope. It's all about mastering a few incredibly powerful tools. Pronouns.
Okay, so let's get into our first set of tools, the object pronouns. You can think of these as the real workhorses of French grammar. They do so much of the heavy lifting to make your sentences sound smooth and natural.
First up, we've got the direct object pronouns. Now, the easiest way to think about these is that they answer the question what or whom right after the verb. For instance, you see what, you know whom. Those little words, le, la, and les, are what step in to replace that noun. Let's see exactly how this works. We start with je vois le film, I see the movie. Pretty simple. The what here is le film, so we swap that out for le. And, this is the crucial part, we move it right in front of the verb. And boom, je le vois. So much cleaner, right?
Next up, we have their cousins, the indirect object pronouns. These guys answer a slightly different question. They answer to whom or for whom an action is happening. So you're not just speaking, you're speaking to someone. That to someone part is exactly what lui and leur are for.
And here's a perfect example. Instead of saying je parle à Marie, we replace à Marie with lui. That little preposition à, which means to, is your big clue. It's like a flashing sign telling you that you need an indirect pronoun. The result? Je lui parle.
Okay, so you're getting the basics. But what happens when there's more than one verb in a sentence? Where in the world does the pronoun go then? This is a spot where a lot of people get tripped up, but the rules are actually super simple once you see them.
So here's rule number 1. When you have a sentence structure like I want to do something, a conjugated verb followed by an infinitive, the rule is dead simple. The pronoun goes right before the infinitive.
Check out this example. Je veux parler à Paul. The infinitive here, the to-do verb, is parler. So our pronoun, lui, doesn't go before veux. Nope, it snuggles right up before the verb it's actually connected to. Je veux lui parler.
All right, on to the other really common situation. Past tenses, like the Passé Composé. The rule here is different. This time, you're on the lookout for the helper verb, the auxiliary, which is almost always going to be avoir or être. The pronoun gets placed right before that helper verb.
So if we look at j'ai donné un cadeau à mes amis, our helper verb is ai. So we take our pronoun, leur, which replaces à mes amis, and we slide it right in front of a. It becomes je leur ai donné un cadeau. This pattern is absolutely everywhere in French.
All right, time to level up. We are now getting into 2 of the most powerful, most versatile, and, let's be honest, sometimes most confusing pronouns in the entire French language, y and n. Seriously, mastering these 2 is a total game changer.
First, let's talk about y. Its main job is to replace any phrase that starts with the preposition à. Most of the time, this is about a physical place, like in Paris or at the store. But, and this is super useful, it can also replace abstract ideas, like thinking about something. Here is the classic example that everybody learns first. Instead of saying je vais à Paris over and over, you just swap out à Paris with y. J'y vais. I'm going there. So simple and so much more elegant.
And now for its partner in crime, ah. Ah is an absolute powerhouse. It jumps in to replace phrases that start with the preposition de. This covers a ton of ground. We're talking about quantities, like some of them, or abstract ideas that you talk about.
Let's look at that abstract idea use case. Instead of repeating je parle de mon projet, I'm talking about my project, you just say j'en parle, I'm talking about it. It's just instantly more fluent. Okay, we've met all the individual players. Now it's time for the final boss level. This is where we put them all together on the same team, combining 2 pronouns in a single sentence to get that maximum level of fluency and conciseness. But wait, you can't just toss these pronouns in there in any old order. Oh no, French is very, very particular about this. There is a strict, unbreakable order that you have to follow. Getting this hierarchy right is the final piece of the puzzle. And here it is. This chart is the secret formula. The direct objects, le, la, les, they always come first. They're followed by the indirect objects, lui, leur, then comes y, and pulling up the rear, always last, is en. You have to burn this order into your brain. This is the key.
So let's see the payoff. Let's go all the way back to our original sentence. Je donne le livre à Paul. Okay, le livre is our direct object, so that becomes le. À Paul is our indirect object, so that's lui. Now we look at our chart. Le comes before lui. So we get je le lui donne. Perfect. That's the formula in action.
And there you have it. You now have the complete formula. You know the different kinds of pronouns, you know the placement rules for different verb tenses, and you have that all-important order for when you combine them. The only thing left to do now is to actually practice.
So why does all of this matter? Because mastering these pronouns is how you stop translating word for word in your head and start actually thinking in French. It lets you get your point across without repeating yourself, it helps you sound more natural, and it truly unlocks that next level of fluency you've been aiming for.
So, I'll leave you with a challenge. Think about the French you use every day. What's one clunky, repetitive sentence you say all the time that you can now upgrade using one of these pronouns? Because that journey to real fluency, it starts with that one small change.
All right, let's talk about giving advice in French. It seems easy enough, right? But believe me, there's a kind of hidden blueprint to doing it well. Today, we're going to break down that blueprint. We're not just talking about what to say, but how to say it, no matter the situation. It's all about seeing how a great lesson is designed to get you sounding fluent and fast. I mean, seriously, how hard can it be? A friend asks for your opinion, you just give it. But in French, it's not really a straight line. It's more like a delicate dance. And this is the absolute key. The words you pick totally change depending on who you're talking to and what's going on. And, getting this right, that is the secret sauce that takes you from sounding intermediate to sounding truly natural and advanced. Okay, so let's get right to the heart of it. In English, our go-to is you should. We use it for pretty much everything. But in French, nope, there's no single magic phrase. Instead, it gives you this amazing toolkit of different options, and each one has its own specific vibe and its own job. So let's open up that toolkit, shall we? Think of these as your essential gear. Once you get a feel for how each one works, you can start building some really impressive, natural-sounding sentences for pretty much any situation you can think of. First up, we've got the classic, the friendly go-to, tu devrais. This is going to be your best friend for just giving casual, personal advice. You should try this restaurant. It's simple, it's direct, it's warm, perfect for friends. Next in our toolkit is a super flexible one, il vaudrait mieux, which is basically, it would be better to. I love this one because it's like a Swiss Army knife. You can use it in a casual chat, or you can use it in a more formal situation. It's just a little bit softer, less direct than telling someone what they flat out should do. Now let's swing to the other end of the spectrum, the really formal stuff. We've got il est conseillé de. This is the kind of thing you'd see on an official sign at a museum or in a travel guide. It's advisable to check one's passport. Very impersonal, very authoritative. And now for the power tool in our kit, il faut que. This means it is necessary, that. And it's for strong, direct, can't ignore this kind of advice. The key here, and this is cool, is that it needs the subjunctive. Il faut que tu dormes plus. That little grammatical twist is what signals just how necessary this advice is. And trust me, you hear this all the time in France. Okay, so you've got the tools. Awesome. But this is where the real art comes in. The thing that's going to make you sound so much more fluent is knowing exactly which tool to pull out of the bag. It is all about mastering that tone. You can really see the split here, can't you? On the one side, with your friends, you're going to lean on that personal, direct, tu devrais. But on the other side, in a professional or official setting, you're reaching for the more impersonal, official-sounding il est conseillé de, or its very close cousin, il est recommandé de. But look, knowing the grammar, that's just the first piece of the puzzle. The real magic, the really fun part, is when you start plugging in the right vocabulary for the situation. That's how you go from just knowing these phrases to actually using them to give great, meaningful advice. So let's actually put this toolkit to work. We're going to look at 3 super common real-life situations where you're definitely going to need to give advice: travel, studying, and lifestyle. Okay, so picture this. You're giving advice to someone who's traveling. A formal guidebook? It's going to say something like, il est conseillé de planifier son itinéraire. A general helpful tip to anyone could be, il vaudrait mieux faire une réservation. But if you're talking to your buddy, you're just going to say, tu devrais vérifier ton budget. See? Same topic, totally different language. And it's the exact same logic for a student. A mentor might give a family nudge, right? Tu devrais organiser tes révisions. But if it's more serious, time to bring out that power tool. Il faut que tu te concentres pour la réussite. And the official school handbook, of course, that's going to be super formal. Il est recommandé de se reposer avant un examen. And for lifestyle advice, the pattern just holds true. Giving a friend some tough love about their habits, il faut que tu améliores ton sommeil. General health advice, almost like from a doctor, il est recommandé de trouver un bon équilibre. And just a nice, gentle suggestion, il vaudrait mieux faire de l'exercice. It works for everything. So there you have it. We've seen all the pieces of the puzzle. We've got the tools, we've seen them in action, but just knowing this stuff isn't the finish line, not at all. The real goal here is to be able to use these phrases with total confidence. And honestly, that's the whole secret behind any good language lesson. It is not about memorizing a list of phrases. It's about following a process, a path, that's designed to take you from just kind of understanding something to actually using it out in the wild, in a real conversation, without even thinking about it. And this right here, this is the blueprint for that process. It's so simple. Step 1, learn the core structures. Those are your tools. Step 2, add the specific vocabulary. That's your raw material. And step 3, the most important part, you practice in real-life scenarios. That's the build. That's when you create real fluency. So, what's the final piece of advice? Well, let's use one of our new tools, shall we? Il vaudrait mieux continuer à apprendre. It would be better to keep learning. Because every single time you practice, you're laying another brick, getting one step closer to really mastering this. Have you ever felt like your French is, well, kind of stuck in first gear? I mean, you can get your point across, sure, but you want to sound more, more French. Well, today we're going to put a turbocharger on it. We're moving past the basic stuff and diving into how to build those elegant, complex sentences that make the language just so beautiful. Okay, just look at the difference here. On the left, you've got these like brick sentences. J'ai un ami. He travels. He tells stories. They're solid, yeah, but they're kind of clunky. Now, look at the right. Wow, that's one single, flowing, sophisticated thought. It's not a pile of bricks, it's a beautiful archway. And making that leap, that's exactly what we're going to do today. So, first things first, we've got our foundational building blocks, relative pronouns. Now, you should think of these as like linguistic superglue. Instead of making a new sentence every single time you want to add a detail, you just use one of these to stick a description right onto your noun. Seriously, these are your secret weapon against choppy, repetitive French. And what's cool is that each of these has its own special job. Qui is all about who or what is doing the action. K focuses on the thing receiving the action. Then you have dont, which is a really sophisticated way to say of which or whose. It connects ideas in a super clever way. And ou is easy. It just nails down where or when something is happening. Getting these down is really the first big step to adding these rich, interesting layers to your sentences. All right, so our nouns are now packed with detail. But what about connecting the big ideas? That's where linking conjunctions come into play. See, if pronouns are the superglue for details, conjunctions are the massive bridges that connect entire clauses, and they show the relationship between them. Like, is it a contrast, a purpose? These words tell you. Now, this is where things get really interesting. Some of these bridges are simple, like alors que, it just connects two facts. But others, like bien que and pour que, they're special. They're what I call triggers. They actually unlock a whole different verb mood, the subjunctive, which is all about expressing your opinion or purpose, not just stating facts. And learning that, that's a huge level up for your French. Okay, this is the fun part. We've got our building blocks, the pronouns and the conjunctions. So let's put on our hard hats and actually build one of these impressive sentences from the ground up. You see, the process is actually pretty straightforward. Step 1, you start with your core idea. Simple enough. Step 2, you add a little detail with a pronoun, so now we know which friend we're talking about. And then step 3, you link the purpose. Why is he telling the story? He wants it so that we're captivated. And just like that, you've built a really complex thought with a clear purpose, all in 3 logical steps. So we've mentioned it, and now it's time to talk about the final, most sophisticated tool in the box, the subjunctive. And hey, don't let the name intimidate you. This isn't just some boring grammar rule. It's like the artistic finish on a piece of furniture. It's the paint, the polish. It's what adds your personal feeling and perspective. So what's the big deal with the subjunctive anyway? I mean, why can't we just stick to the facts all the time? What does this mood actually do for us when we're speaking? Well, it's all about making that shift from objective facts to subjective feelings. The normal verb mood you use all the time, that's for the black and white logical stuff. But the subjunctive, that's for the color. It's for your emotions, your doubts, your opinions, your hopes. It basically tells the listener, hey, this isn't just a fact, this is how I feel about it. It's kind of like the voice of your inner world. And the best part is, French gives you these clear signposts to let you know when to use it. When you see phrases like these, pour que, bien que, or il faut que, think of them as keys. You've just used a word that unlocks the door to the subjunctive. The verb that comes next has to shift into this more expressive, more personal mood. Okay, so now you have the complete toolkit. You've got pronouns for adding detail, conjunctions for connecting ideas, and the subjunctive for adding your personal touch. Now let's see how all these pieces can come together to do something really powerful, like tell a whole story in just one sentence. Okay, now this is a masterpiece. Let's break it down real quick. You start with l'article que j'ai lu. Boom, there's your relative pronoun. Then, il faut que nous protégions. Bam, that's our subjunctive trigger right there. And it ends with alors que beaucoup l'ignorent, a final conjunction for contrast. See that? 3 different advanced tools all working together in one smooth, elegant, and powerful thought. That's what sophisticated communication is all about. So now the challenge goes to you. Think about something, an article you read, a trip you took, an idea you have, and try to capture its essence by weaving all these pieces together. Use a pronoun to add detail, a conjunction to show purpose or contrast, and maybe, just maybe, a subjunctive trigger to show how you feel. Go on, give it a shot. What story can you tell?
All right, so let's jump right in. We're going to be talking about something that is absolutely key to really, truly mastering French. It's this idea that you're not just learning one language, you're actually learning two different social codes. You kind of have to build two different French personas.
I mean, think about it, right? Let's say you need to impress a potential boss in Paris, but you also want to grab a coffee with a new friend you just made. The way you talk in those two situations is, well, it's night and day. This is way more than just picking different words. It's about navigating two completely separate worlds. And if you get it wrong, you might come off as super stiff to your new friend, or worse, accidentally sound rude to your new boss.
Okay, just look at this slide. It says it all. On the left, you've got Je souhaiterais postuler pour un emploi. Super polished, very professional. I would like to apply for a position. On the right, Je veux un job. I want a job. See what I mean? The one on the left gets you the interview. The one on the right is so blunt, it might just get you a weird look. Knowing when to flip that switch between these two personas is everything. So let's start with persona number 1, the professional. This is all about cracking the formal code. This is a language you'll pull out when the stakes are high and you really need to make a good impression. In French, this is called the registre soutenu. It's that precise, super polite language you'd use for things like job applications, official letters, any situation where you need to be taken seriously. Think of it like a business suit. You don't wear it every single day, but when you need to, it makes a really powerful statement. And a big part of this is swapping out your everyday words for their formal cousins. So instead of just saying application, you'd use candidature. A job becomes a poste. Your skills are your compétences. And if you're not happy about something, you express your insatisfaction. These aren't just fancy synonyms, you guys. They're the expected vocabulary in these formal settings. And it's not just the words. The grammar totally shifts too. You start building these longer, more complex sentences. And here's a big one. You have to avoid contractions. It's always je ne peux pas. Never, ever je peux pas. Oh, and you lean heavily on the conditional tense to sound extra polite. So instead of I want, it's I would like. The whole vibe is clear, respectful, and very neutral. Okay, let's hang up that business suit. It's time to meet your second persona, the friend. This is where we get into the casual code, the French you'll actually hear on the streets, in cafes, and hanging out with people. This informal register, the registre familier, is all about connection. It's about speed and emotion. This is the language that signals you're relaxed, you're comfortable, that you kind of belong. It's packed with all the slang, the shortcuts, and the inside jokes you would never, ever dream of putting in a business email. And this is where the language gets really fun. That formal post, now it's a boulot. Instead of saying you formally appreciate something, you just kiff it, you love it. If you're having a tough time, you're not encountering difficulties. No, you're en train de galérer. You're struggling. And if something is just wild or unbelievable, say ouf, which, fun fact, is backwards slang for lent, for fou, which means crazy. So yeah, the rules basically do a complete 180. Remember how we said no contractions in formal French? Well, here, they're not just allowed, they're pretty much mandatory. Je suis becomes je suis. Sentences get shorter, way punchier, use exclamations all the time like trop bien for that's awesome. But the absolute number one rule, know your audience. This is for friends, for casual settings only.
All right, now that we know the playbooks for both of these worlds, let's watch the transformation happen in real time. This is where you'll really see it all click into place.
So on the left, you've got this very proper formal complaint. I wish to express my dissatisfaction concerning your service. Now look at the right. Same idea, but how you'd say it to a friend. C'est nul votre service. Basically, your service is terrible. See? Both express that you're unhappy, but the tone, the context, it's a completely different universe. Here's another perfect example. The formal version. I am encountering difficulties. It sounds a little distant, very neutral. But the informal, je galère grave. That translates to something like, I'm seriously struggling. You can just feel the emotion and the intensity in that one. It's how people actually talk about their problems. Okay, so the theory is one thing, but how does this actually play out in real life? How do you go from your Monday morning email to your Friday night plans? Let's put these codes into practice. Here is your dead simple formula for a formal email. Seriously, it's foolproof. Step 1, a polite opening. Step 2, state why you're writing. Using a set phrase like, je me permets de vous écrire, which is like, I'm taking the liberty of writing to you. And step 3, wrap it up with a classic formal closing. You do this, you will always sound professional. And now, boom, let's jump to the weekend. Listen to this. T'as kiffé le dernier concert? Vas-y, on sort ce soir. That's like, did you love the last concert? Come on, let's go out tonight. It is so fast, so friendly. You've got the contraction ta for tua, the slang word kiffe, and that great little phrase vas-y, which is like saying let's do it. This is what friendship sounds like in French. So, after diving into these two very different worlds, what is the big takeaway here? What's the real secret to sounding not just like you know French, but like you're truly fluent? It's this. True fluency is really a form of social intelligence. It's not about memorizing the most words in the dictionary. It's about knowing which words to use in which moment. It's knowing when to wear the suit and when to wear the jeans. Mastering that switch, that's what separates a good French speaker from a truly great one.
So I'm going to leave you with this question to chew on. Thinking about your own language learning journey, what's the biggest, or maybe the funniest, mistake you've ever made by using the completely wrong word in the wrong situation? Because let's be honest, that's where the real learning happens. Thanks so much for tuning in.
All right, let's talk about French. If you've been putting in the hours, learning the grammar, memorizing the vocab, but you still feel like your French is, well, a little flat, this is for you. Today we're diving into the secret to sounding genuinely French, idioms.
You know that feeling, right? You've spent all this time getting your sentences perfect, your conjugations are on point, but when you say it out loud, it just doesn't have that spark. It's a super common problem, but believe me, the solution is way more fun than another grammar drill.
Okay, look at this. This is the perfect example. On the left, j'étais très triste. I was very sad. Totally correct, nothing wrong with it. But then you look to the right, j'avais le cafard. Now that has flavor. It paints a picture, It's not just sad, it's a specific kind of gloomy feeling. And that's the difference between just speaking the language and really living in it.
So how do we make that jump? How do we go from textbook perfect to authentically French? Well, idioms. They're the bridge that's going to get us there.
Here's how I like to think about it. Grammar, that's the skeleton. Vocabulary is the muscle. But idioms are the personality. They're what give a language its color, its sense of humor, its emotion. It's the stuff that just doesn't translate word for word. And that's what makes it so special.
So let's build you a toolkit. I'm going to walk you through 3 really common, really powerful idioms you can start using, like today, to make your French sound so much more alive.
We already saw this one, but let's really pull it apart. So you're feeling a bit down, you've got the blues. In French, you'd say you avoir le cafard. But what does that literally mean?
Yep, to have the cockroach. Isn't that a wonderfully weird image? And that's why idioms are so great. They stick in your head. Just picture a little cockroach of sadness wandering around in your brain. You're not going to forget that, are you?
So, bottom line, avoir the cafard means to have the blues, like in this example. Depuis qu'il a perdu son boulot, il a le cafard. Since he lost his job, he's been feeling down. It just perfectly captures that heavy, lingering kind of sadness.
All right, let's switch gears. Picture this. You've got to do something nerve-wracking. Maybe ask for a raise or have a tough conversation. You need to just psych yourself up and go for it. Well, there's an idiom for that exact moment. Literally, it means to take one's courage in 2 hands. And this one is great because it's so physical. You can almost feel yourself gathering up all your courage, holding it tight, and then just moving forward. It's actually pretty close to what we'd say in English.
It means to pluck up courage, and the example sentence is perfect. J'ai pris mon courage à 2 mains pour lui parler. I plucked up the courage to speak to him. It's all about that one single moment of deciding to be brave.
Okay, now for the complete opposite. You just got amazing news. You're bursting with happiness, just totally buzzing. How do you even begin to express that kind of pure, unadulterated joy?
You jump to the ceiling! What a fantastic image. See, you're not just happy. You are so over-the-top ecstatic that you feel like you could literally shoot through the roof. That little bit of exaggeration is what makes it so fun and expressive.
So yeah,
It's our way of saying to be over the moon or to jump for joy. For example, quand j'ai gagné, j'ai sauté le plafond. When I won, I jumped for joy. It's just pure excitement.
All right, so you've got these awesome new phrases in your back pocket. But how do you actually weave them into a conversation? Because they're not just museum pieces, right? They're living, breathing parts of the language. Let's see how you can make them fit your story. And here's the really cool part. It's not complicated at all. These phrases are super flexible. Let's stick with avoir le cafard. The core of the idiom, le cafard, that never changes. All you do is change the verb to fit your story. So you can say, il a le cafard, for right now, hier j'ai eu le cafard, for yesterday, or even, demain il aura le cafard, for tomorrow. You just conjugate the verb as you normally would, and the idiom just works.
Okay, now let's put it all together. Using one idiom is great, but when you start weaving them together, that's when you can tell a really powerful story.
So, our story starts at a low point.
J'avais le cafard après un échec.
I was feeling down after a failure. Right away, we know exactly where our narrator is emotionally. They're in that gloomy cockroach zone.
But then we get the turning point. Mais j'ai pris mon courage à deux mains et j'ai essayé encore. But I plucked up the courage and tried again. You can feel that shift, can't you? That decision to grab your courage with two hands and give it another shot.
And here it is, the payoff. Finalement, j'ai sauté au plafond de joie. Finally, I jumped to the ceiling with joy. So we've gone from the bottom, having the cockroach, all the way to the top, jumping to the ceiling. And with just 3 idioms, we've told a complete emotional arc. It's awesome.
Look, this isn't just about memorizing phases. This is about giving you the power to express your actual personality, your feelings, and your stories in French.
So, here it is, your new toolkit. Just these 3 expressions can cover so much ground. You've got avoir le cafard for when you're feeling low, prendre son courage à deux mains for when you need to be brave, and sauter au plafond for those moments of pure triumph. 3 amazing tools ready for you to use.
You've just been handed the key to a much more vibrant, much more personal way of speaking French. So really, there's only one question left. What story are you going to tell first?
All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're unpacking the rich and, yeah, sometimes complicated world of French culture. But this isn't just about famous landmarks. We're talking about getting a handle on the people and, well, all those unwritten rules that shape their daily lives. So, let's get into it. Okay, picture this. You're in France, meeting someone for the very first time. What do? It seems like a simple question, right? But the answer can be surprisingly tricky. Getting it right is your first and maybe most important step. And it all boils down to this one really key concept called politeness. So here's our roadmap for today. First, we're going to decode French greetings, that all-important first impression. Then we'll get into the unspoken social rules that really guide everything. After that, we're going to venture beyond Paris to explore some amazing regional flavors, see how France shines on the world stage, and finally, we'll wrap it all up with the philosophy behind it all, the art of savoir-vivre. All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, Decoding French Greetings. Because trust me, in France, a simple hello is so much more than just a word. It's really the key that unlocks respectful interaction. So at the very heart of everything is this idea of politesse. Now, this isn't just about saying please and thank you. It's more like the entire social operating system. It's this formal code of respect that's kind of running in the background of every single conversation, every meeting, every little interaction you have. Okay, this is probably one of the biggest things you need to know, the difference between tu and vous. I mean, they both just mean you, right? But they carry totally different social weight. Tu is for your inner circle, friends, family. It signals closeness. Vous, on the other hand, that's your default setting. Use it with strangers in professional settings and as a sign of respect to elders. Honestly, getting this right is huge. And you know, this whole practice is so important, it actually has its own name, vouvoiement. It's not just some obscure grammar rule, it's a massive pillar of the culture. Nailing the use of vous really shows that you get it, that you respect the etiquette. Okay, so we've got the greetings down. Let's move on to Section 2, the unspoken social roles. Because once you get past that first hello, you'll find there's this whole rhythm to daily life in France, guided by a few key principles that nobody really talks about. First up, time. In France, being punctual, or la ponctualité, is a really big deal. Showing up on time for a meeting or even a dinner party isn't just a nice thing to do, it's a fundamental sign of respect for the other person and their time.
And just as important as being on time is the meal itself, le repas. In France, a meal is not something you just scarf down at your desk. It's a ritual, something to be cherished. Seriously, it's given the same weight as a major business meeting. The focus is on the conversation, the connection, the experience is the whole point, not just the food.
Now, it's really easy to just think of French culture as this one single thing centered around Paris, right? But that couldn't be further from the truth. So in Section 3, we're going beyond Paris to check out the incredible variety of regional identities that truly make up the country.
And this chart gives you a perfect snapshot of just how dramatic those differences can be. I mean, look at the north versus sunny Provence in the south. You can literally hear the difference in the accent. You feel it in the climate. And the traditions. You've got unique local festivals up north and those famous lavender celebrations in Provence. And the food, oh, the food. It transforms from hearty traditional cuisine to light Mediterranean-inspired dishes. It is seriously like visiting two totally different countries.
All right, let's zoom out a bit. For Section 4, we're looking at France on the world stage. And we're going to focus on two massive cultural events that grab the entire world's attention every year, showcasing France's dual passions for both elite sports and high art. First up, the Tour de France. And look, this is way more than just a bike race. It's a national obsession and a global phenomenon. Every single summer, millions upon millions of people from all over the planet are glued to their screens, watching these cyclists battle it out across the gorgeous French landscape. And for those cyclists, the ultimate prize, the thing they're all fighting for, it's le maillot jaune, the iconic yellow jersey. But it's not just a shirt, is it? It's a global symbol of pure grit, endurance, and triumph in one of the toughest sporting events on Earth. Okay, so now let's shift gears from the punishing roads of the Tour to the absolute glamour of the film world. Every year, the who's who of international cinema flocks to the French Riviera for the Cannes Film Festival. And the biggest prize in the whole business, the one everyone wants, that's La Palme d'Or, the Golden Palm. So here's the thing to really grasp. France commands the world stage in these completely different arenas. On one hand, you have the sheer athletic power of cyclism out on the open road. And on the other, you've got the high art and glamour of cinema on the red carpet, the tapis rouge. France is home to these incredible and very different symbols of global excellence. And that brings us perfectly to our final section, the art of savoir-vivre. This is the idea, the philosophy that really ties everything we've been talking about together. So what is savoir-vivre? Well, it literally translates to knowing how to live. And it's this beautiful philosophy that weaves through everything. It's about approaching life with a certain grace, right? Valuing thoughtful conversation and taking the time to truly appreciate life's pleasures. This is the mindset behind the formal greetings, the long treasured mealtimes, and that immense national pride they have in their cultural achievements.
So, if we boil it all down, here's your 3-step cheat sheet. Step 1, greet formally. Get that vouvoiement down. It's your foundation of respect. Step 2, respect the rituals. Be on time and treat meals like the sacred social events they are. And Step 3, embrace tradition. Whether it's the unique flavor of a local region or a massive national event, appreciate it all.
And that's our whirlwind tour of French culture. We've gone from a simple hello all the way to global events. So I'll leave you with this to think about. After everything we've looked at, what's the one piece of French etiquette, that one little cultural detail that's really going to stick with you?
All right, let's talk about that moment. You're so close to understanding spoken French. You can feel it, but you just can't quite break through. If that sounds familiar, you're in the right place. Today, we are going to crack the code on fast, authentic French and help you finally smash through that B2 plateau.
So why is it so tough? It's the question every intermediate learner asks. I mean, you've put in the hours, you know the grammar rules, you've got a decent vocabulary, so why does a simple news report or a casual conversation still sound like a complete blur? It's a huge frustration, and trust me, you are not alone.
And that right there, that's the heart of it. You can pick out individual words, right? You hear urgent, gouvernement, decision, and you know what they mean. But the overall point, the actual message, it just seems to slip right through your fingers.
This is what we call the B2 listening plateau, and it's a very real wall to hit.
So let's start by really digging into this challenge. Because once you can actually name the problem and see it clearly, the solution becomes so much easier to find. We're going to break down exactly what's been holding you back.
Now this is a total game changer. This idea flips the whole problem on its head. The answer isn't to just cram more and more vocabulary. The real key, is to fundamentally change how we listen. We need to shift from just passively hearing sounds to actively decoding meaning.
So, let's get practical. Let's build that toolkit for active listening. I'm going to walk you through 3 essential tools that go way beyond just knowing words. These are the things that help you pick up on all the nuances of what's really being said.
Tool number 1, tone, or tone. You have to ask yourself, is the speaker being serious right now? Are they being ironic, sarcastic, formal? Figuring out this emotional layer is absolutely critical because it can completely change the meaning of a sentence. It's the difference between great job and oh, great job. You know?
Next up, we've got debut, which is really just the pace of the speech. Is the person talking a mile a minute? That could signal excitement, maybe urgency. Are they speaking slowly, hesitating a bit? That might suggest they're uncertain. The pace is a massive contextual clue that tells you so much more than the words alone.
And finally, the master key to unlocking so much of spoken French, sous-entendu. This is the implied or hidden meaning. It's the art of understanding what is meant but not actually said. For instance, if a French person says c'est pas mal, literally, it's not bad, the sous-entendu is often, wow, that's actually really good. Getting a feel for these hidden meanings, that is the skill that will launch you past the B1 level for good.
Okay, so you've used your new tools to decode the audio as it comes in, but how do you process it all and actually remember it? This is where your new superpower comes into play, reported speech. This is the technique you're going to use to take all that messy, real-world audio and organize it into clear, understandable thoughts.
Just look at this slide. It shows the transformation perfectly. On the left, you've got the raw audio, the direct quote. On the right, you have your clean, structured summary. Je suis fatigué becomes il a dit qu'il était fatigué. See what happened? You're not just repeating the words, you're processing them, organizing them, and really making the information your own.
And I know it looks a little grammatical and scary, but it's actually a pretty straightforward 3-step process. First, you introduce the idea with a reporting phrase like, he explained that, or according to the journalist. Second, you just shift the verb tense back 1 step. It's a predictable rule you can learn. And third, you just tweak any pronouns or time words to fit the new sentence. That's it, you've done it.
Okay, theory is great, but practice is where the magic really happens. We've got the concepts, we've got the tools. Now, for the most important part, how to actually put it all into practice in a way that gets you real results.
First things first, you need the right material. And the key here, this is really important, is to use short, authentic audio clips. I'm talking 1 to 2 minutes tops. News reports from France Info, interviews from RFI, podcasts, they're all perfect. The goal here is focused quality practice, not drowning in a 30-minute broadcast.
Now, as you listen, please do not try to write down every single word. That's a recipe for disaster. Instead, use a simple template like this one. Just ask yourself 3 questions. What's the main topic? What's the tone? And what are the 2 or 3 most important ideas? This forces you to listen for the big stuff and ignore all the noise.
And here it is, your clear, achievable mission. Take your notes from that 2-minute clip and turn them into a tight 3 to 4 sentence summary. This one little exercise brings together every single skill we've talked about, from decoding the tone to using your summarizing superpower.
So let's zoom out for a second and look at the whole strategy. This isn't just a random collection of tips. It's a clear, repeatable system that builds a direct path from where you are right now to where you want to be with your French listening.
It all comes down to this powerful 3-step cycle. First, you decode. You listen for those deeper layers of meaning. Second, you summarize. You turn that raw audio into a structured thought. And third, you practice. You do this over and over again with short clips. This cycle is the engine that will drive your progress forward.
So here is your homework, your immediate call to action. Don't just think about this, do it. Go find a short clip tonight and write a summary. Make a point of identifying the speaker's tone and try to spot at least one implied meaning.
This is how you make these skills stick and see real, tangible progress starting today.
You know, when you learn to listen this way, you're not just improving your language skills. You're getting a key that unlocks a whole new level of culture, humor, and connection. So the only real question left is, with your new listening toolkit, what hidden meanings are you going to uncover first?
So you're staring down the DELF B2 French exam, huh? I totally get it. That writing section can feel like the final boss in a video game. But what if I told you there's a cheat code? Well, today we are going to unlock it. We're going to break down the entire writing task into a simple, step-by-step game plan. Here's how we're going to do it. First, we'll size up the challenge itself. Then we'll drive to your personal writing blueprint. After that, we'll get into the secret weapon for connecting all your ideas smoothly. We'll also learn how to dodge those really common grammar traps. And finally, we'll set you on a clear path to get you writing fluently. Sound good? Let's dive in. Okay, so let's start at the beginning. What are the examiners really looking for in this B2 writing test? I'll tell you right now, it's not just about getting your verbs right. It's about building a solid argument and, doing it all with the clock ticking. First thing to know, the word count. You're aiming for 180 to 250 words. Now, this isn't meant to trap you. Think of it more like a sweet spot. You need enough detail to make your point, but you also have to be concise. Every single word counts. And as you can see here, success is about more than just good grammar. You absolutely need a clear structure. You've got to show off some varied vocabulary, and your arguments need to be persuasive and flow together logically. And on top of all that, you have to nail that formal tone. All right, knowing the rules is one thing, but having a real strategy is what makes you win. So let's build a solid writing blueprint you can use for the two main types of tasks you're going to face. First up, we have the opinion piece. Your mission, basically, is to present and defend your point of view. You're not just sharing what you think, you're building a fortress of logic around your ideas, backed up with real examples. And here it is, your magic formula. It's so simple, and you can use it every time. You start with a clear intro that states your position. Then, in the body, you lay out 2 or 3 strong arguments, each one backed up with an example. And finally, you wrap it all up with a conclusion that summarizes everything and leaves no doubt where you stand. Next up is the formal letter. Think of this as your chance to communicate with someone important, like a mayor or a company director. Your tone has got to be polite, professional, and to the point. And here's a pro tip. Just follow the formal conventions exactly. Start with the right greeting, get straight to the point in your intro, use the body to explain the details, and always, always end with one of those super polite closing formulas. It shows you know what you're doing. Having a great structure is like having a strong skeleton. But a skeleton is just a pile of bones without ligaments holding it all together, right? In writing, those ligaments are your connecting words and phrases. Think of these cohesive devices, or connecteurs as they're called in French, as the road signs for your reader. They're these little words that guide them through your logic. They tell them, hey, here comes an example, or watch out, I'm about to show the opposite point of view. Just look at this example. See the difference? Without d'abord and cependant, the sentences are just there. But with them, you create a logical flow. The text instantly feels smarter and is way easier to follow. That's the power of these little words. And for formal letters, these expressions are like the secret handshake. Using phrases like je me permets de or je souhaiterais immediately signals that you understand the formal culture and that you should be taken seriously. Okay, we've built our offense with a strong structure and a smooth flow. Now it's time to work on our defense. We're going to get a little technical here, but stick with me because this is where you can really shine. We're going to learn how to spot and fix the most common grammar traps. First up, agreement. Now, subject-verb agreement is usually okay, but the real boss battle is that tricky past particle agreement with avoir when the direct object comes before the verb. See that little E on the end of écrit? That's a B2 level detail that makes all the difference. Next, let's talk about tenses. Mixing up your past tenses is a super common mistake. And another big one is confusing the conditional with the subjunctive. Remember, after a phrase like il faut que, you pretty much always need to use the subjunctive. It's a key rule to remember. And finally, pronouns. The word order can feel like a total puzzle at first, but once it clicks, it really clicks. And please, don't forget about the dynamic duo, N and E.
Using them correctly is like another secret handshake that shows you're really getting the hang of French. Okay, you've got the theory, you've got the structure, and you know what mistakes to look out for. Now it's time to put it all together and get you on the path to fluency.
So here it is, boiled down to one simple formula. A solid structure is your foundation. Connectors are the glue that holds it together, and careful proofreading is your shield against mistakes. This is it. This is your recipe for success.
And now it's your turn. Here are 4 classic B2 prompts to get you started. Just pick one, set a timer for about an hour, and write. Don't stress about making it perfect the first time. The goal is just to practice using the blueprint we talked about. So, what's it going to be? A letter to the mayor? An opinion on social media? You've got the tools, you've got the plan. The only thing left to do is to start writing. Go on, show them what you've learned. You've totally got this. All right, let's talk about the DELF B2. If you're here, you already know it's a big deal. So today, we're not just going to talk about it, we're going to build your personal playbook, a step-by-step strategy to absolutely ace this thing. Let's dive in.
So let's be real for a second. Is this exam the one thing standing between you and that university spot, that job in a French-speaking country, or just that amazing feeling of personal accomplishment? Yeah, it can feel like a huge wall, and that pressure is totally normal.
People call it the gatekeeper to real French proficiency, and that sounds pretty intimidating, I know. But here's the thing about gates. Every single one has a key, and today we are going to craft that key together. This is all about strategy. So, step 1, we're going to demystify this beast. Honestly, a lot of the fear comes from not knowing what to expect. So we're going to break down the exam piece by piece, turning this big unknown into a series of small, totally manageable tasks.
Okay, take a look at this. The big takeaway here is the balance. You've got 4 sections, listening, reading, writing, and speaking, and each one is worth exactly 25 points. What does that tell you? It means no single part can tank your score. They're all equally important, which is great for building our strategy. First up, we've got listening. You can expect to hear audio clips that sound like they're pulled straight from real life. Think news reports, interviews, that kind of thing. Your job is to prove you caught the main ideas. Next, you've got the reading part. Here, they'll hand you texts, maybe an article or a formal letter, and you'll need to dig in. It's not just about what the words say. It's about understanding the writer's argument and their real purpose. All right, now it's your turn to shine. The writing section is where you get to produce the language. You'll probably be asked to write something like an opinion piece, where you'll need to build a solid, persuasive argument from scratch.
And finally, the speaking component. You know, this is the one that gets a lot of people's hearts racing. But don't worry, it's actually really structured. You'll get some time to prepare a short monologue based on a text, and then you'll have a discussion with the examiner. Okay, so now we know the lay of the land, right? We know what the battlefield looks like. Now it's time to stock your arsenal. We're getting into the real meat of it, the actual tools and strategies you need to walk in there feeling confident.
The number one absolutely most crucial tool in your entire toolkit? Time management. Seriously, this isn't about rushing. It's about being smart. If you can control the clock, you can control the exam. It's how you avoid panic and make sure you get to show off everything you know.
So how do you actually do that? Well, it breaks down into 3 simple steps. 1, before you even start, give yourself a mental time budget for each task. 2, for writing and speaking, always take a minute to outline your thoughts. And 3, the golden rule. Leave yourself a few minutes at the end to review your work. That can be the difference maker, for sure. Now, for listening, here's a huge tip. Don't try to catch every single word the first time you hear the audio. It's just not going to happen. The first listen is for the big picture. Get the gist, the context. Then, on the second listen, you can zoom in and hunt for the specific details you need. When it comes to reading, the name of the game is efficiency. Give the text a quick skims first to understand its structure. Then look at the questions and maybe even tackle the ones worth the most points first. And please don't let one word you don't know throw you off. Use the context to make an educated guess and just keep moving. For the writing section, your best friend, your secret weapon, is structure. A quick 2-minute outline at the beginning is a lifesaver. It keeps your argument logical and on track. And again, I'm going to sound like a broken record. That 5-minute proofread at the end is absolutely non-negotiable. Okay, speaking exam. It's totally fine. In fact, it's a good thing.
to pause for a second. It makes you look thoughtful, not lost. You can even use some natural French fillers like eh bien or en fait to buy yourself a moment. And just make sure you hit every single part of the prompt they gave you. Now, all these amazing strategies, they're kind of useless without one thing, right? The fuel for the fire, your vocabulary. You can't make a great argument if you don't have the words. So let's talk about the topics you really need to know. You'll find the exam tends to stick to a few key areas. We're talking about the big four: the environment, education, technology, and culture. Getting comfortable with key terms in these areas like changement climatique or patrimoine will give you the confidence to talk about anything they throw at you. All right, theory is one thing, but what does this actually look like in the real world under pressure when the clock is ticking? Let's take a quick look at how you'd put these strategies into action. Okay, picture this. You open your exam booklet and you see this writing prompt. It's a total classic. Your first thought shouldn't be panic. It should be, okay, strategy time. Outline first, balanced arguments, let's go. You're building a response, not just writing.
And boom, check out this example sentence. It is perfect. It translates to, digital tech makes learning easier. Nevertheless, students need to stay focused. See what it does? It presents an advantage, uses a fantastic connector word, néanmoins, and then perfectly pivots to the disadvantage. That's the balanced, sophisticated stuff they're looking for. So there you have it. You've got the map, you've got the tools. Now it's all about actually walking the path. So let's talk about the concrete things you can start doing like today to get yourself ready and, more importantly, to feel confident. So what are your next steps? Here's your mission should you choose to accept it. 1. Do a full practice test under real-timed conditions. It's the only way. 2. After, don't just score it. Think about which strategies you used and how they felt. 3. Take that vocabulary we talked about and start using it in your own sentences. Make it yours. And if you take away just one thing from all of this, let it be this. Look at this chart. Strategy is important. Vocabulary is crucial. But look at that huge bar right there. Consistent practice is the engine that makes everything else work. It's the real key to success. You are now officially equipped with a plan. That gatekeeper exam, you've got the key right in your hand. The only question left is, which strategy are you going to start mastering first? Your journey to acing the DELF A2 starts right now.
Have you ever felt like you're just stuck in a language learning rut? You know, you can handle the day-to-day chats, but the second the conversation gets a little deeper, say politics or philosophy, you just hit a wall. Well, that's called the intermediate plateau, and today, we're going to look at a detailed blueprint for completely smashing through it.
I bet this feels familiar. You can understand almost everything you read or hear, but when it's your turn to speak, the words just aren't there. That gap between what you know and what you can actually say, that's the frustrating trap of the intermediate plateau. You're not a beginner anymore, but you're definitely not fluent. It's got to be one of the most maddening stages for any language learner out there.
So what are we aiming for here? What's the goal? It's what language experts call B2 level fluency. And look, this isn't just about ordering a coffee without messing up. This is about being able to debate politics, to discuss social justice, or to really analyze the impact of technology. It's about expressing these complex, nuanced arguments on abstract topics. That's the real deal, the good stuff of advanced communication. All right, so how do we get there? We're going to follow this blueprint. First, we'll build what we're calling an advanced language toolkit. Then we'll put all that theory into practice. After that, we'll get ready to tackle the ultimate test, mastering the monologue. And finally, we'll map out the path to true, long-lasting fluency. Let's get into it.
Okay, first up, building your toolkit. You just can't construct a complex argument without the right tools, right? So this is where we lay the foundation for everything that's going to come next.
You know, a really great lesson plan, it always starts with a deliberate structure. It's not random. It kicks off with a quick warm-up to get your brain fired up, then it moves right into building the specific vocabulary you're going to need. And finally, it's about mastering the grammatical structures that will hold your arguments together. You see, each step builds right on top of the last one.
And here we can see exactly the kind of vocabulary we're targeting. We're moving way beyond table and chair here. To talk about politics, you need words like democracy or government. For society, you need inclusion and justice sociale. For technology, innovation and dependence. These words are the literal building blocks of an intelligent conversation.
Next up, we have a grammar tool that, let's be honest, terrifies a lot of learners, the subjunctive. But wait, just look at its purpose.
expressing opinions, doubts, possibilities. It's the absolute key to adding nuance. So instead of just saying, society is inclusive, you can now say, it is crucial that society be inclusive. Il est crucial que la société soit inclusive. That is a massive, massive leap in sophistication.
And this slide just brilliantly illustrates the power of what we call connectors. On the left, you've got a simple, kind of flat statement. Technology is useful. Okay, fine. But now look at the right. Just by adding one little phrase, par conséquent, or therefore, you create logic, you create flow, and you create a much more powerful idea. You've actually connected two thoughts into a real argument.
So, now that we have the tools in our toolkit, it's time to put them to work. It's time to stop talking about it and start doing it, to move from theory to practice and step into the arena of actual conversation.
And this right here is so important. A full 25 minutes of this entire lesson plan is set aside purely for active speaking practice. Why? Because theory is totally useless if you can't apply it when you're under pressure. The whole point is you have to actively use these new skills for them to have any chance of sticking.
The first activity is a debate. For instance, are social networks good or bad for society? One student has to argue for them. But notice the structure here. They promote communication, therefore they are essential. That little connector, donc, is doing all the heavy lifting, creating a solid, logical argument right on the spot.
Then, of course, the other student argues against them. And just look at this beautiful, nuanced sentence. They create dependency, nevertheless they have advantages. Using a word like néanmoins, wow, it shows you can hold two conflicting ideas in your head at the same time, which is a true hallmark of advanced thinking and speaking.
And the practice keeps on going with another role play, an interview. This one forces you to think on your feet, both asking and answering some pretty complex questions as either a journalist or an expert. It's simulating a high-stakes, real-world conversation where being clear and precise is absolutely key.
So this brings us to the climax of the entire lesson, mastering the monologue. This is where all the skills we've been building, the vocabulary, the grammar, the practical application, they are all put to the ultimate test.
So what is this thing? Well, the task is actually modeled on official fluency exams like the DELF A2, which is a big standardized test for French language proficiency. You're given a prompt, and then you have to prepare and present a structured, persuasive argument for 2 to 3 minutes straight. It's a true measure of your ability to think, structure your thoughts, and speak coherently in the language.
So how in the world do you do it? Well, this slide deconstructs it perfectly. It's like a formula. You start with a clear claim. Education is crucial. Then you support it with a reason, using a connector like ga, which means because. Then you acknowledge a counterargument with cependant, or however, and you wrap it all up with a nuanced opinion using the subjunctive. Il faut qu'elle soit accessible. It is necessary that it be accessible to all. It's a perfect little structure.
So, the lesson is over? Are you fluent now? Well, not yet. The final, critical step is understanding that the path to fluency is paved with continuous, structured practice. The real work doesn't stop when the class ends.
And this is exactly what that practice looks like. The homework isn't just a bunch of random exercises. Nope, it's a very targeted continuation of the lesson. You record another monologue to keep practicing fluency, you write a short opinion piece to work on coherence, and you create new sentences to reinforce that new vocabulary. See? Every single task has a purpose.
So the most important takeaway here is this. Just living in a country or binge-watching movies isn't always going to be enough to get you past that intermediate plateau. The real key, the secret sauce, is deliberate, structured practice that's focused on building and then applying the tools of advanced communication. It's all about strategy, not just exposure.
And you know, that principle doesn't just apply to learning a language, it applies to literally any skill, whether it's learning an instrument or coding or public speaking. So the final question I'm going to leave you with is this. What intermediate plateau in your own life are you ready to break through?